Dear Universe, please stop connecting everything to everything else. Sincerely, Snake Bros.
And we are back in the dark, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons, monsters and serpents. Here on Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. Since we are not actually reading from a real book, we have been able to turn the lights back out in the tangent cube.
Nice and calm.
And nice and gloomy and dark, which is how we usually do the show. So, I don't really know what we're going to talk about in this show.
I got lots of stories.
Yeah. Got some emails. We got 3 one-up boxes.
Yes.
That we're going to open. And, of course, we have space for the news and everything like that. And we are joined, as always, by our good friend and longhead, Mr. Brett England, the Watcher from deep beneath his secret space station in secret outer space. How you doing, bud? Your microphone working?
I sure as hell hope so.
Oh, yeah, it's working.
All right. It's been some difficulties with the communications array out here in space.
Yeah, and you keep leaving your good headset, like, in the EVA outside the station. And then you're like, I can't find them. They're floating around somewhere in the dark.
Well, you know, I mean, if things were easy, they'd be much less interesting.
That's right.
Yes, I'd say that tin can is very, very resonant in the high frequency ranges.
That's right. It does. This is definitely the tin can microphone that he's using right now.
I'll try to take that into consideration.
All right, let's go ahead and do Space Weather News. Thing turned down. From spaceweather.com. Penumbral lunar eclipse. This Friday, the full moon will pass through the outskirts of Earth's shadow, producing a penumbral lunar eclipse. Is that how you say that?
I think so.
Yeah, penumbra. The eclipse will be visible from Africa, Australia, Antarctica, parts of South America, and Asia. Basically everywhere except North America. God! Dang it!
I think the penumbral eclipse is when you just get the darkening of the moon.
Yeah.
Right, it's...
Yeah, so it passes through the outskirts of the Earth's shadow, it says. Yeah. So it doesn't actually totally eclipse it because it's just the... maximum eclipse occurs on June 15th at 1925 UTC, it says. There's also they have a video, if anybody wants to go check this out. It says, play this movie to see what it will look like. How can they know what it's going to look like?
Well, we had one not too long ago.
Right.
I actually watched it.
Also, inferior conjunction of Venus. Yesterday, Venus passed less than 1/2 of a degree from the sun, an event astronomers call inferior conjunction. How dangerous is that to observe? In France, amateur astronomer Nicolas Lefebvre stripped his telescope of anything that could catch on fire. He took the tubes out and everything. It's just the lens and the mirror. Observing Venus close to the sun is extremely dangerous, he says. Instead of trying to shade the sun, I removed everything that could burn. The telescope tube is replaced by a metal bar, and the sun is focused on a glass prism that reflects dangerous sunlight away from the camera. This allowed me to observe Venus very close to the sun, only 36 arc minutes from the solar limb. High clouds prevented me from observing Venus even closer to the sun later in the day, he said. Yet, I am very happy that the time dedicated to this paid off, and I was able to capture the full Venus ring safely. So, yeah, he's got multiple pictures on here of Venus eventually turning into a ring.
Wow,
that's
really cool.
Venus looks like a ring because at inferior conjunction, the planet's night side faces Earth. Sunlight filtering around the edge of Venus's atmosphere outlines the dark disk with a ring of light. Photographs of the Venusian ring of fire are very rare, yet several may be found in today's photo gallery. Cool. Also, sunspot sunset. He says there's a sunspot in this photo. If you can't find it, look here. Juan Manuel Perez Riego took the picture yesterday when the sun set over Merida, Spain. During solar minimum, which is underway now, the sun is usually blank and featureless. However, new solar cycle 25 is showing signs of life. Yeah, does it look like it's over there? Kyle just pointed at it.
It's a guess.
And AR2765, which is the number of the sunspot, is the largest sunspot so far in the young solar cycle, large enough to appear in sunset photos. Soon, perhaps it will start to flare as well. It says, caution, even when the sun is dimmed by low-hanging clouds or haze, it can still damage your eyes. Yes. Sunlight magnified by unfiltered optics is dangerously bright. If you choose to photograph the low sun, use the camera's LCD screen for safe viewfinding. Never look into the eyepiece of an unfiltered camera or telescope when the sun is in the field of view. I mean, unless, you're real serious about science. Which, I have to say, when I set... I've done this before. I have a couple of telescopes, and when the sun is going down and it's getting close to the horizon, up on the deck and at the top, next to the tower up there on the hill where I live, the deck is a great place to set up a telescope. So when the sun's going down, I have found that I can, when it gets close to the horizon, I can kind of, because the telescope is almost flat, so it's easy for me to put a welding lens on the eyepiece because the eyepiece comes out the top of the scope. But I did other experiments because I also found that I could, when I did that and I had the thing facing the sun, I could arrange the eyepieces so that I could just hold out a big fat pad of paper. And if I did the focus right, it would project the sun onto the paper and you could see all the sunspots and it was nice and big.
Yeah, that's cool.
But if you put your hand too close to where that light is coming out, it hurts.
So you shouldn't put your eye near it.
Right, because it'll burn your skin. Just like, I have it going.
You're talking about projecting without the lens, the welding lens.
Without the welding lens, you can project the sunlight onto a pad of paper that you hold the right distance away.
Right.
And I mean, it comes into clear focus. It was really cool. When I did it, it was...
So we need to erect a tent type of thing with some blackout curtains in there.
Yeah.
With the projector type screen up where.
Yeah, what is that called when you do that? You poke a hole and it'll there's actually
I don't remember what that's called.
But yeah, you can do that. You can do sun observing by poking a little tiny hole and then it'll cast the image of the sun on the but yeah, doing it with the telescope is cool because I could focus. Mm-hmm. And at the time I did it, there were 3 sunspots and they were in a equilateral triangular formation on the face of the sun, and it was clear as day.
Man, that's cool.
When you held the pad out, there were 3 black dots on it that you could see really easily.
Wow.
Yeah. A pinhole camera. Thank you, Watcher. That's right.
So what are the conditions?
The conditions.
You interrupted your space.
That's right.
Space weather.
I got distracted by serious science. The current conditions: solar wind speed are 345.4 kilometers per second, and the density is 5.8 protons per cubic centimeter.
Okay.
Yep. And we are still at 78% spotless days in this year, which is, like I've said before, higher than all the years before this in the minimum. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't remember if it was last time. Recently on the show, I reported a story about
Where's the sands of time? Ah.
Oh, well, I didn't even start this.
Yeah.
I reported on these guys in Antarctica finding another alternate universe where time runs backwards.
Time runs backwards.
And I did not get that from a tabloid. However, I did get it from a website that did get it from a tabloid.
The source was legit, but the source's source may not have been legit.
But I got away with it. Okay, so this is from sci-fi.com. This is Bad Astronomy, our good buddy Phil Plait.
That's right.
He's back again. No, NASA did not discover a parallel universe where time runs backwards. Have you heard that NASA that a NASA particle detector experiment discovered a parallel universe where time runs backwards? It's all over social media, mostly with people making jokes, questioning what else 2020 has in store for us. But it also seems to have piqued a lot of folks' interest. I've had many queries asking me if the story is true. Is it? Quick answer. No.
Right.
Long answer. No, it isn't.
It's piqued a lot of people's interest, so his job is to get rid of that interest.
More detailed answer. Well, this will take a sec to explain, but the bottom line is this particle detector did find something really strange, but it's not clear what it is. Saying it discovered a parallel universe is simply not true. At best, the data are consistent with this idea, but that's a long, long, long way from actually finding alternate realities. The experiment at the heart of all of this is the Antarctic Impulse Transient Antenna, or ANITA. It's a University of Hawaii experiment funded in part by NASA and also by the DOE. So the claim that NASA found anything is a little misleading, though it makes for a fun clickbaity headline. What ANITA looks for is neutrinos. A neutrino is a weird subatomic particle. It has almost no mass and doesn't interact with normal matter very easily, making it hard to detect. In general, a neutrino can pass through huge amounts of matter like it's not even there. But they play a big role in particle physics and astronomy. A lot of extremely high energy events like supernova, black holes gobbling down matter can emit lots of neutrinos, so many that even though a teeny fraction interacts with matter, it happens often enough to detect. That's okay. So let's see. That's where ANITA comes in. When extremely energetic neutrinos slam into the ice in Antarctica, they emit little bursts of radio waves, and the characteristics of the bursts tell you a lot about the characteristics of the neutrino events. ANITA is made up of antennas that detect radio waves. It floats in a balloon many kilometers above the ice, watching for those radio bursts. It finds a lot of such events, but only a few are actually cosmological, coming from astrophysical sources in space. One such event is what's called a cosmic ray shower. Super high energy subatomic particles like electrons and protons slam into our air and create a cascade of subatomic particles moving downward, a bit like how a bullet hitting a rock will create a shower of shrapnel. This also makes a burst of radio energy that ANITA can also detect. Here's the weird bit. Over the course of 4 flights, ANITA detected 2 anomalous radio bursts that, from their characteristics, appeared to be like cosmic ray showers moving upward. That's the opposite of what you'd expect.
Yeah.
That is really weird. The only way you'd expect to see something like that is if a particle moved through the Earth, north to south, and created the particle shower after it emerged in Antarctica. Cosmic rays cannot do this. But wait, you think, neutrinos can pass through the Earth, right? So maybe that explains it? Yes, neutrinos can indeed pass through the Earth, but critically it depends on their energy. Relatively low energy ones can, but the higher energy, the less matter they can pass through without interacting. At high enough energies to explain the ANITA results, they can't pass through matter much at all before hitting something. So if a neutrino at that energy can't pass through the Earth, what created the upward moving particle shower? And that's the big question. Scientists have been trying to figure it out for a while. Some have looked to standard explanations. For example, maybe some cosmic source emitted so many high-energy neutrinos that just by chance a couple of them could pass through the Earth, unlikely as that might be. But if this were the case, other detectors like IceCube would definitely have seen something, and nothing was found. Weirder things have been considered too, like new physics, strange variations on what we think we understand. One such case is odd forms of dark matter that could generate similar signals. These are generally considered bullshit. But if everything else is eliminated as a candidate, then looking into new physics is the next step. He didn't say that. I did.
What, the bullshit?
Yeah. They are generally considered unlikely. That's what he said. It's how dark.
He wanted to say.
That's what. Yeah. That's what. Yes, that's right. You know, you wanted to say that, Phil.
Yeah.
It's how dark matter and dark energy were discovered, for example. But it could be more mundane. An experimental result is only as good as your understanding of what can affect the experiment. Weird results could be due to some effect you didn't know about. That could be inside your device. Remember the faster-than-light neutrino foofarall a few years back? I don't remember that.
I do.
Okay.
It turned out they said it was announced that it seemed like some neutrinos had moved faster than light from one detector to another, and then they eventually, a couple of months later, they announced that it was some cables that weren't plugged in right or something like that.
Yeah, okay. Makes sense. Okay, so
You're not helping, Watcher. He's posting pictures of Ice Cube.
yeah, I know. I thought about trying to bust into some, to like try to wrap this out the rest of the way, or some way the environment affects things. Okay, that's been investigated as well, and may very well explain the anomalies. Physicist Alex Pizzuto put up a short Twitter thread on exactly this, and then he goes through this Twitter stuff. To be fair, it's possible that something really, really weird actually is going on, something so outside our normal framework of physics that it seems, well, silly. Mind you, that's okay. When you really start running out of explanations, you turn to the odder and odder. Again, dark energy is about as weird as it gets, and astronomers argued about it for years before finally accepting it as the best explanation of various observations. And it doesn't get more bizarre than postulating a different universe where time runs backwards. In such a universe, a lot of physics we understand in our own universe would be backwards too. Electrons would have a positive charge instead of negative, protons negative instead of positive, making antimatter rule there instead of matter. In the macroscopic world, you could unscramble an egg, and the cosmos would be contracting instead of expanding. To us, it would be chaos, cats and dogs living together. Mind you, this is wholly theoretical, just an idea. I'm not even sure this idea was seriously proposed. Original sources have been hard to find since the tabloids promoting this story seem to just quote each other.
Cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria.
That's right. So that was a really great breakdown of what was going on. And yeah, so, for a moment there, I was like, okay, so I really was fooled by a tabloid. But Phil has updated this article. Update! 22nd of May, 2020. Aha! A friend sent me links to a paper that postulates the idea of a backwards universe and shows how the Anita results are consistent with it. There's also an article about this idea that explains it pretty well. And so then the rest of the article is him doing another mea culpa about
well, okay. So it wasn't a bunch of tabloids. There was an actual source for this story, but I'm still right.
He did a great job explaining what because that's what the tabloids didn't do.
Yeah.
They didn't actually tell you all the details about the experiment. So I commend him for digging all that up.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I mean, I agree. He says it's not inconsistent with this idea.
Right.
That doesn't mean
they found it.
Right.
He's right about all that.
But then he goes on to say discovering dark matter and dark energy. And I'm like, you've
discovered that?
No one has ever found those things.
Well, yeah, he says they finally accepted it as the best explanation.
Oh, yeah. Earlier.
Oh, okay.
He talked about the discovery of dark matter.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I wasn't listening to the earlier part.
I like it. Yeah, Watcher says, so yeah, something new we don't understand must be because of dark matter doing dark mattery things.
That's right. That's right.
Well, you got more space news, or should we do emails and boxes? Before we end out this...
no, I don't...
because we got 10 minutes.
I don't have space news. I mean, I've got plenty of stories, but...
Right. But you did your space news.
Yeah, my space news is done.
Okay. No more space. Well, we have other space stuff to talk about later on in the show. Weird space thingies.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do...
All right. I think we...
stuff.
So in terms of emails here, let's start with the... we got some reviews. So remember how I've been talking about this, I love this path, right? What this guy called the digital esoteric path. Joe Rogan experience to Graham Hancock to Randall Carlson to snakes. So the next one we got, this is a totally different path. But this is great. I love it. Like, this should be a thing. People put your path in the reviews here. So this one's called Outstanding, 5 stars. Sasquatch Chronicles to Strange Familiars to Where Did the Road Go to Snakes? That was this guy's path.
Wow.
Yeah. I guess he likes cryptids. And Strange Familiars is a really great podcast that has been featured in the Where Did the Road Go feed sometimes. We've talked to that guy. We did a show, one of the Patreon segments we did with Soraya. He brought that guy on.
Yeah.
That was the Strange Familiars guy. He's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, anybody interested in really strange, anomalous stuff and getting lost in the woods and cryptids, and like they actually go out and do field research. It's good. Strange Familiars is a great show. And they also research like local legends.
Oh, that's
They did
cool.
a whole series of shows on this thing about the legends of Toad Road, I think is what it's called. This road where there's supposed to be the hide behind, and something that follows you. Do not turn around and look, because you will be the guy that disappears. And they talk about how in the Native American legends, they put the bravest guy in the back because he had to be the one to not turn around and look.
What was that stuff when we were kids, like spy gear? You buy these kits, comes with all this spy gear.
Yeah.
They gave you those glasses that had the mirrors on the side so you could see behind yourself.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. What are they trying to do to us?
All right. The next review is called "The Podcast I've Been Searching For." It says this is the absolute best podcast for those interested in ancient history, geology, cool science, megaliths, especially pyramids. The Snake Bros are intelligent, witty, well-read, and funny as hell. This podcast has everything, even killer bumper music. Snakes!
Oh, thanks, buddy.
From Crispiest. From the U.S. Crispiest.
The swiftiest of the crispiest.
And let me pull up the full review here. This one is called "The Best Podcast Out There Now." And there it is. How do you find this podcast? Joe Rogan to Graham Hancock to Randall Carlson to Cliff Dunning to Snakes. Once you start listening, you have to listen to all of them. My ears are hurting and my mind is blown. These guys and far more charming gal present hard to read and understand material in a comfortable way that makes you think you just stumbled upon the universe's best cannabis-infused bonfire. From Foodie, from the U.S. Thank you guys so much. Great reviews. I always love the reviews. Okay, a couple of emails here.
Got a shout out for Laura there.
Yeah. Yeah, these guys and
Far more charming than
gal.
us.
That's right.
Yes, of course.
It's totally true. Okay, this is a great email. It's called "The Spiraling Tale of the Confused Psychonaut." And at the end of the email, he gives his name as King Totally. So he says, "Hey, Snakes. I wanted to share some morsels of madness with you so they can escape my head and infect someone else who most likely will be able to put the pieces together better than I. I was a longtime psychonaut who, throughout too many direct experiences, swore off all the esoteric lessons and nonfiction I had been reading out of fear of insanity. The final straw was a book called I Am a Strange Loop that forced me to face the possibility of non-existence and threw me into a panic attack that resulted in years of Harry Potter books. I purposefully pacified myself because my mind just could not handle it. Recently, I ran into an old friend who was a Freemason, and boy, did he have a story for me. He told me that throughout his time with the Freemasons and their libraries, he had come to the conclusion that Freemasonry is basically a secret psychedelic cult. This sounded a little wild. I took what he said and stored it away, but it ate at me. The psychonaut in me was wide awake after years of slumber. I fell down a rabbit hole that eventually landed me in a dark pit filled with serpents. Ah! But, to my great surprise, these snakes came bearing gifts of light. In fact, the snakes themselves seemed to glow. The shiny ones. Again. These shiny ones, as we'll call them, were discussing a book called Gods of Eden. The themes and ideas that came bursting through my headphones were not only astounding, but familiar. I've been listening to your series, guys, and not since my mushroom days have the stories of the fall of man, the snake, and the tree of knowledge been so engrossing. When I was younger, I always assumed that the tree of knowledge was a psychedelic mushroom which gave Adam the ability to see beyond, sparking the modern brain. I always assumed that the serpent was a metaphor for our desire for truth. So he's talking about the stoned ape theory, I guess.
Yes.
Right? He says, here's where it gets weird. Before now, I was content with the allegorical interpretation of many parts of religious texts. As long as my sacred mushrooms stayed right in the cozy center of the conspiracy, these metaphors were fine. But now, after not only hearing Gods of Eden, but also Matthew LaCroix's work, Randall and Brad, and many others all expressing the same themes about ancient history, I am beyond baffled. I was completely blown away with all the big metaphors that religion had given me. After all of my psychedelic adventures, it seemed very clear that what Ram Dass and the other counterculture gurus were saying, that underneath it all, reality was teeming with metaphor on top of metaphor, that God was the self, and all the stories surrounding God were strictly to do with consciousness, they all felt too real to deny. I have even heard beautifully strung together tales of the flood being allegory for humanity losing its way. But now Randall and his like-minded colleagues show up and bash that idea into nothingness. The more I learn about 1, ancient history, and 2, Eastern mysticism, it seems that literal reality and allegorical reality seem to both somehow be true simultaneously. I'm getting into deep waters here, so I will finish quick. As above, so below. Love the podcast, guys. Enki would be proud. Or should I say, the allegorical hero in each of us would be proud? P.S. The snake in the Jungle Book is named Ka. Sounds suspicious.
Yes.
Report back. Snacks! Sincerely, King Totally.
That was an awesome email.
That's a great email.
Yes. Man, I know this is why we talk about these myths, the religious texts, all of these stories that come down as though they are a sort of technology, because somehow infused into these stories are like these timeless metaphors that do relate to each person. You know, they relate to humanity or one single person's life and the trials and the things that they experience throughout life, different stages of life. And then they're tied, of course, to the stars and the myths of all of that. But at the same time, they're telling a real history.
Yeah.
And in strangely encoding numbers and mathematical and geometrical ideas and things that are also true. It's really crazy how this is done and what genius came up with this method.
Yeah, and the more you look at it and the more that you see that, like, yes, there are these allegorical things that can be tied into psychedelic experiences, plus real information about the stars and astronomy, plus real information about the structure of the freaking universe, and then plus real information about people and persons and individuals and the way people and persons and individuals interact, telling true stories through metaphor, or using true stories to illustrate metaphor, plus all these other things together, and you start to say, okay, there's a meta structure here, that there's a reason why all of these things all work in the same context.
Yeah.
Right? That, like he says at the end of this, as above, so below. In other words, that like all of this stuff is reflective of everything else in the parts of it.
It's almost like that phrase is scale invariant.
Yes.
Scale invariance.
That's
As
right.
above, so below. The bigger is the smaller, and the
Right.
smaller is the bigger, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I had a thought this morning. It was just a brief thing. Maybe it was yesterday. But I was thinking about lyrics and stuff. I'm driving along. I was looking at the landscape. And I was thinking about metaphors and how we use these metaphors and then, that sort of led me into like these great metaphors that seem to be timeless. And how is it that we're able to connect, the growth of a tree, for example, to the life of a human or something else in the universe, or, just you can connect all these things to nature, to all these other things, and you can tell its story in such a way that it actually tells the story of something completely different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that made me think of what you always say, oh, this is all, it's just pure information.
Right.
Which is why, and so I'm like, okay, so the conceptualizations required for us to develop language to begin with are already organized and connected in that system of information.
Yeah.
That leads to the characters that eventually arise to describe the physical motion of the mouth and the voice to make the word. So we come up with all these series of characters.
Yeah,
they
yeah.
have embedded ideas and concepts attached to them that are also embedded in this already organized.
You're
in the
having to
system
build it in the system.
in the system already, so
Yeah.
that when you finally get done, then you can string words together talking about one thing, but really meaning something completely different
Yeah.
in a beautiful way.
Yeah.
You know, it's like these metaphors are telling us this is how everything is always connected to everything else.
Yeah.
And they really are. That's what I thought of.
Yeah. Like we used to say this earlier a lot, or like years ago in the podcast, like, you know, dear universe, stop connecting everything to everything else. Sincerely,
Thanks,
Russ.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, and then of course it eventually just got shortened to dear universe. Like once you said that, everybody knows what you're talking about. Dear universe, please stop connecting everything to everything else. Sincerely, Russ.
So then I started thinking about the basic idea that, you know, one way of describing it is you can stand at the ocean at the shoreline and you can look at those waves, and if you could perfectly analyze all like the exact motion of the waves coming in, that they would contain in them all of the information of all of the moving animals within the water, the boats that are on the water, the winds that are pressing against the surface of the water, which are also connected to, well, the moving of the water would be connected to the tides. The winds are connected with the Coriolis effect, the spinning of the earth. So eventually it would tell you, you know, that we are a spinning ball, that we have a moon, that there's a sun out there, all of this stuff. If all you had eyes for was the crashing waves on the shore, you would eventually be able to figure out by analyzing that everything else in the universe. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, if you removed a galaxy out there somewhere, it would change
Yeah.
something about the
would
way
change
those
it,
waves
yeah.
are crashing on the surface at the shore.
Yep. That's right. Wasn't that, though, I was just thinking of, because it reminded me of Cryptonomicon, where he's standing on the shore and he's thinking that all the enemy ship movements
Yes.
are encoded in the waves.
Yeah,
that are
they
crashing
are.
at his feet. And he's like, God dang it, I can't read it.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that is connected also to the fact that we can write these stories,
Yeah.
you know, that encode this stuff.
Right.
But it's not that just any gibberish can be made sense of. Maybe it's like it's done in such a way because we don't have the technology to get that information out of the crashing waves,
Right.
right? But if we develop,
You had like infinite processing power and the ability to see actually all the information that's coming in, and then you could process it somehow. You could extract that information.
right? So light is a much better source
Yeah.
for that information.
Right.
Okay. So we can look and see the sun, and we can see all the stars, and we can detect the radio waves, and we can pick up the microwave background radiation. That's actually telling us a lot clearer using the technology that we have at hand what's
Yeah.
going on in the universe than the crashing waves at the shore, just because we don't have the technology or the machinery to figure this out, the
Yeah.
tools to analyze it so in depth. So in the same way as writing a story, perhaps anything that anybody wrote down, those things would be in there, but they would be so hard to.
Yeah. It would be.
So there's a way you can do it that makes it easier to draw out the information.
Yeah. And then again, like going back to the psychedelic part or the psychonaut part, you know, you take these substances and the substances once again they grow in the system.
Yes.
and then they get into your body, which is also a part of the system. They interact with it in certain ways, change some chemistry or whatever, and all of a sudden you're seeing things, patterns, light that seem to show you parts of this system.
Right. Yes.
So, yeah, I agree, man, that, King totally, I totally agree that this stuff is great. And I'm so glad you found the podcast and that you've been enjoying it.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. It's how often do you get to say that? I've once again, I've been enjoying talking about the Tree of Life and Enki and the snakes. That's great. Yeah. Really, really good email. Thank you so much.
And I'm glad I heard it because it totally reminded me of that whole thought process I had just recently. Would have slipped the mind. All right. Should we take a break and come back? And
sure.
Do some more?
Yep.
All right.
Taking a break.
Servants! Welcome back to the Snake Bros Institute for Advanced Coprolite Studies, where we are going to be reading listener communications and philosophizing a little bit on this episode between book reports.
That's right.
And maybe we'll get some people on, some guests, some other guests.
We do have some possibilities for guests.
Yeah. So, not today.
Not today.
But in the coming few episodes between books.
Yes. So I have another good long email here. This is the last one. I'm trying to sort these better. I'm having to cut out a lot more than I normally would. I can't read as many. But there were basically two that I really wanted to get on the show, and this is the second one. It's called Brain Expansion by Marty. Marty says, greetings, fellow denizens of South Texas. As you know, not everything in the world around us is tangible. As such, unless one has access to MRI or CT scan data taken both before and after exposure, the prospect of quantifying 30% brain expansion may seem rather fanciful. Based on my own experience, I posit that regular listeners will note that whether driving alone in their car or at close proximity to others in the workplace, whilst listening to your show, they will, with increasing frequency, find themselves laughing out loud at obscure esoteric jokes, and catch themselves with mouth aghast at the realization of the implications of information being discussed prior to your subsequent elaboration of such ramifications. And boom, there it is, the ethereal signature of significant brain expansion brought about as the result of prolonged exposure to paradigm-shattering concepts and snakes.
Fantastic breakdown. Thank you.
As both an engineer and author with a penchant for out-of-the-box methods for tackling technical challenges, I would like to bring your attention to just such a concept in a field central to your subject of interest. Forgive me if you are aware of this research, but I have not heard reference to it in any of your podcasts thus far. The electric...
What?
Mario Buildreps is a pseudonym for a group of engineers and mathematicians who have applied what I believe is a very unique technique to the challenge of dating ancient sites and structures around the world. Their method is predicated upon consistencies in the cordial alignment of structures to at least 5 distinct nodes in which they interpret as the locations of previous geographic poles. Interestingly, these poles seem to correlate closely with ice core records of glaciation cycles, thereby providing them with a basis for mathematical estimation of probability for dating accuracy. Fascinating stuff. Even if they are full of shit, props to them for exploring a completely new, to me at least, potential line of evidence, which may suggest extreme antiquity for many of these sites. I can't say that I accept 100% of the conclusions they draw, but I do see how much of the information they present regarding crustal deformations could fit quite well with both Randall Carlson's geological observations and Dr. Schock's CME theories, if one considers the potential effect the latter could have on the viscosity of the asthenosphere. If you haven't explored their website yet, and he gives a link to it, I believe you will find it to be quite an intriguing rabbit hole. Disclaimer, I am in no way associated with their organization. Enough from me for now, but I am proud to be on board as a supporter of your quest for knowledge. Thank you for bringing us all along on the ride. Much love from the Valley. Snacks, Marty.
Wow, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
That's cool. But I didn't understand the first part of the explanation of how they were.
So basically, he's looking at alignments of sites, and he thinks that these people, not him, it's a pseudonym for a group of engineers and mathematicians, right? Mm-hmm. And they have seen what they see as alignments of various sites that point to 5 different poles.
Cool. So they're using the alignment of ancient
structures. And they see that, here's a set of structures that all point to this spot.
Very cool. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. I love that.
Yeah.
Because, again, we've talked about this before, but if this were to have occurred, then all of the sites that currently align to the cardinal directions are after.
That's right.
Right? So,
yeah.
Great Pyramid.
Yep.
The Sphinx. They don't even have to align to the cardinal directions. They can have significant astronomical alignments that would not exist.
Yeah. So what he meant here was, instead of cordial, I think he meant cardinal. Their method is predicated upon consistencies in the cardinal alignment of structures to at least 5 distinct nodes, right? So there's 5 different places they all point to, which they interpret as the locations of previous geographic poles.
Cool.
Interestingly, these poles seem to correlate closely with ice core records of glaciation cycles, thereby providing them with a basis for mathematical estimation of probability for dating accuracy.
Those sites.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yes. Awesome. Thank you for clearing that up.
Yes, and he says later that implies that some of these sites may be really
old.
Really old.
Yeah.
Yeah. If the dating for the glaciation cycles is correct.
Pumapunku is pointing everywhere. All right, let's open those 1-up boxes.
Yeah.
Buddy. Oh, is that the only other email? Or
That's the last email, but I did want to say, so thanks to Doru, who became a 1080 Patreon.
Thank you, buddy.
And that Marty, whose email I just read, became a 1440 Patreon.
Thank you, buddy.
And Frank re-signed up to the 4320 Patreon. Master Commander of the Snake Force, Frank.
Thank you, buddy. I messed that up. Thank you, buddy.
And yeah, he sent a message. He said, Snake Bros just stopping by and dropping a note to let you guys know I finally found my way back. Still not completely out of the jungle yet, but I can see some of the silhouette of the mountain peaks on the horizon through the trees. LOL. By the way, episode number 149 was a great live, not live end of a book deep dive Discord broadcast podsode. Had fun. Peace and see you guys in the pit. Frank. What was it? Live, not live. Live, not live, end of a book, deep dive, Discord, broadcast, podsode. That's great. Yeah, so we tried to broadcast the last episode into the Discord, which was a disaster.
Yeah.
But
epic fail twice.
Yeah. So we appreciate that.
Better luck next time.
Yeah, next time it'll be better. All right.
But of course, we handled all technical difficulties flawlessly.
0 mistakes. I think I can open this one. Maybe not. Yeah. I know what this one is. It's got to be a book. You can tell. Woo. Yeah, so this is Uriel's Machine. Pretty sure. Hardcover version. Snakes Rock. Uriel's Machine by Christopher Knight and Robert Lomas. At the convergence of natural science, ancient history, and religious scholarship, the study of Uriel's machine penetrates the mystery of a disaster that shaped a new world. As the authors uncover the scientific truths behind 10,000 years of oral tradition, they begin to define a new paradigm of prehistory with surprising relevance to today.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think that was sent to us by Den. That's his name in the
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. We will definitely take a look at this. Although I probably, if I'm going to read it on the show, if we do a deep dive into it, I'm going to get the digital version. But this is a beautiful hardcover, still wrapped in the plastic. All right.
This box is awesome.
Oh, it's got tape.
Yeah, it's got Jesus tape.
Jesus tape on it.
I hate to cut the Jesus tape.
It also has stickers all over it
Yeah.
with mummies and pyramids and ankhs.
And the mail carriers must have been like, wow.
Yeah, she's like, cool, 108.
Yeah. Wow.
Whoa.
Wow, this is
like
beautiful packaging.
freaking parchment. This paper. It says, hey, Snake Clan, hello. Enjoy the enclosed booty. You can see that during the UK lockdown, I've been overly crafty and creatively ambitious. Okay, so it was important for me to cast some real-life spellings in a written note to say 1,000 thank yous for all of the hard work, dedication, and passion for bringing such a phenomenal podcast to the planet. Especially during the global virus show, I'm certain that the Brothers of the Serpent content has been a really effective distraction and refocus for your listeners. Because I know personally that one minute I'm like, oh, big G gods and goddesses, here's the long-head Machiavellian technocratic metropolis we're all gonna die timeline, to, oh, it's just a ride, man. We're so blessed and creative for exactly this crazy time. Just go listen to Snake Bros laugh their faces off with a dose of no agenda and cosmographia. She calls that a brain purge. Okay. So thank you for the happiness and awesome topics. Thank you for reading my rambling emails and laughing at my Brothers of the Serpent promo flyers. Thanks for the epic foreign accents. Thank you, Snake Bro Russ, for taking the time to communicate and crack me up via the Discord. Shout out to the fun and lovely Laura. Be well, slither salubiously, and get to pyramids. Good vibes. Mega Snake fan, Shannon. P.S. My son is still working on his satanic folk song. Stand by.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I love you.
Postscript. Discord administrator. Thanks. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. We made her an admin in the Discord. So watch out. She will hit you with the band hammer.
Booted.
That's right.
Man, this box is full of goodies. Look at this.
I know. It's like Kyle's over here unpacking the treasure trove while I'm
There's
reading.
like a little block of lapis lazuli, metamorphic sacred blue stone. Wow. And she's got these like wooden tags on them. This one is a
Man, look at that.
block of Palo Santo incense. Super sacred.
Super sacred.
With a nice little wooden tag. There's a little beautiful little gold bag here that says made for the snake wife.
All right.
And then
We should drag her in here to look at it.
Kind of fragile. Unofficial bag or unofficial bots peg action figure. In-key Kyle. Character includes free Shungite Shamir and fully functional lapis lazuli portal.
Yeah, and mine says kind of fragile, unofficial bots peg action figure, quicksand Russ. Character includes free snake, 100% venomless, fully functional portal, and light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. We're all going to die portal. Wow.
Inky Kyle.
It's got shoulder rivers.
Oh, yeah.
And a serpent. Yes, wooden peg people kit for Laura and Snakeling. That's what I thought. This is
For
a craft
Snakeling.
kit, so he can make his own his own character.
Okay.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then finally, another note. Anti-radiation stickers.
We should stick them all over Seoul, for sure.
Does not protect against 5G. Oh. No, I'm just kidding. It doesn't say that. Thank you.
I think this is a bookmark.
Yeah, that's an awesome Egyptian bookmark.
Egyptian bookmark.
And then the last is the Gods and Heroes of Ancient Greece, an illustrated wall chart showing the legends, descent, and relationships of the gods and heroes of Greek mythology.
Wow.
Very cool. Completed by Robert A. Brooks. Wow, we'll have to open that up and check that out. That's very cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Last big, huge box. Knife. There you go, sir.
Where should I start?
On the edge. Yeah, I'll just... All right. Should I try to read this? I'm going to be terrible. Dear Snake Fam, if you're reading this note, it means that this package has not been confiscated. I'm still a free man, and the goodies inside have not been imbibed by the warehouse staff of my local FedEx facility. I think everything is pretty much self-explanatory, but I wanted to let you know about a couple of items. You'll find a little something from my daughter, Lilia, and you'll also find a small bag with some tokens. If you're ever out east, again, hunting ancient mounds or rock walls, colonial root cellars, swing by the brewery, and those tokens are good for a few drafts on me.
All right.
Yes.
Hey.
Beer tokens. Ha! I'm writing this note on Pentecost Sunday, and I just packed this morning about each person. I'm sorry. And I just preached this morning about each person being blessed with gifts and being invited to share the gifts they have, however great or small. It reminded me of the value for value system that you guys often talk about on the show. You guys freely share your gifts and invite others to do the same. This one-up box is a way for me to share what I have to offer and to say thanks for the 33% brain expansion. Yes, it hurts, but it's all good. I have beer. Enjoy. Your brother in fermentation, Pastor Jordan.
Wow.
Snakes! That's great.
Yes, it hurts.
Hey, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, value for value.
Frickin' beer tokens. Can't beat that. Yeah, so there's a from his daughter, the first thing on here is she says, "I love the Sphinx too, Lilia." And she's got a drawing of the Sphinx. And it says, "P.S. attached is a school project I did on the Sphinx." And yes, underneath it is a report that she did called The Sphinx of Giza by Lilia. And then on the back is another picture of the Sphinx.
Very cool, yeah.
This is really cool. She says, "I used YouTube, History Channel, Wikipedia, and Google Earth." What? Where's Snake Bros?
Man, look at these goodies in here. What is this? Oh, beer coasters.
Yeah, so we got T-shirts.
Very nice.
And he asked us for the sizes, so there should be one for
each.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ah, right on.
Yes.
It's an egg with stars.
All right. We got to get to the beers, though. Okay, here are the tokens.
Awesome.
We're looking for the beers. We know they're in here.
Hey, there's a cold bag right there.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Oh, yeah.
And I just so happen to have a nice cooler full of ice.
That's right.
Right here.
Oh, wait. Hey, look. We got tumblers. Beer glasses.
Oh, whoa, dude.
With the Wolf. What is
nice.
it? Wolf Brewery?
Wolf Hollow
Wolf
Brewing
Hollow
Company.
Brewery.
West Glenville, New York. Check it out, folks.
Wow. some glasses. And lots of beers. Holy crap. Wow.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy.
How many we got in here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Man, we're going to be hammered at the end of this show.
They did not explode.
That's right. Individually wrapped.
Wow, these cans are beautiful. Look at that. I like this style, dude. The silver can with the wrap on it. It's cool.
Man,
12-pack.
12-pack.
And they're 16 ouncers too, so it's 12-pack
All right.
of teeners, man.
Teeners. Thank you guys so much.
Yes.
There will probably come a day when we won't be able to open all the 1-Up boxes on the show. But for now, I feel... I mean, this is the ritual. This is the custom. Because, you know, it's people take the time to put these together and send them to us. And I'm like, we got to open it on the show.
Yeah.
So,
It's great.
yes.
All right. So thank you guys so much for that. And I guess we'll get back into some news stories or what's
Yeah, well, I have a couple of things I want to try to talk about. I've been thinking about the arrow of time.
Oh, no.
What?
I'm just kidding. Yeah, let's go. Let these beers cool down in this cooler.
Well, yeah, no, I want to kind of do a, you know, what is the arrow of time? Like, you know, as described, it's about entropy. Have you've heard some of this?
Yes.
So I don't know. I've just been thinking about it. Like, why do we describe it that way? Why do we look at it in terms of like as time passes, or you know, or you can determine the passage of time by the increase of chaos in a system or disorder?
I just think that this is one way of looking at it.
Yeah.
I agree that I'm not sure that the entropy is the answer, but that's kind of the way the physicists talk about it.
Right. Yeah. But
just give a brief description of the connection.
Okay. So
for the audience.
So I've been trying to come up with, and that's what I've been doing. So for the past week or so, I've been thinking about this, and I've been trying to think of how could I illustrate this. And the best way to me, or the way that I like to think about it, is in terms of if I try to give you an experiment, like a mind experiment or a thought experiment, where you can see what the idea is. And I'm not sure I agree with the idea, but I understand enough about how they talk about the arrow of time and entropy in order to construct an idea. So imagine I think of it as a box standing like a shallow box that you've stood up so that it's, you know, so you're basically looking straight at it. At the top is a very thin slit in the box through which grains of sand can be poured. Okay? So they're basically, when you pour the grains of sand in, they're falling through the slit and they're kind of falling through the box in a wave, or like in a curtain.
A sheet, yeah.
A sheet, right? And then they hit the bottom of the box and there's probably some holes in there or whatever so they can sink. They don't pile up. Okay? So now I take a camera and I set the camera up and zoom it in so you can't see any of the outside edges of the box. You can't see the top of it where the sand is pouring through, and you can't see the bottom where it's hitting. All you get is sand passing the camera, okay? Now let's say that this camera can take, 600 pictures a second, okay? Something like that. And the pictures that it takes are perfectly square, okay? They're completely square. So you're in a room somewhere. I run this experiment where I let the sand pour through the box for a couple of seconds. And then I come into the room with a huge stack of photographs that this camera has taken. And I've got them all scrambled up and I just throw them on the floor. Now, your job is to take these. Now, obviously, this would take forever, but just imagine that you have an infinite amount of time and you don't get hungry or thirsty or have to sleep, right? Like
I am a supercomputer.
That's right. So now you have all these pictures. You don't know. I've scrambled them up and I've flipped them over. So the first thing you have to do is start trying to arrange them, right? And since each one has been taken like 1/600th of a second,
I can put them in one of two orders.
that's right. Well, eventually,
I will be able to see
you'll be able to get them in order, but you won't know which
one was the beginning
and which one is the end.
That's right.
Right.
Because I'll be able to track a single grain of sand from the top of the frame to the bottom.
Right. And then
But I won't know whether it was the top or the bottom.
That's right.
Yes.
So imagine now that the camera is full spectrum. Okay. So the stack
Now I see the box.
Huh?
Now I see the box?
No, the camera's full spectrum. It takes the data in each photograph takes a photograph of all possible light.
Okay.
So now it should be possible for you to determine the beginning and the end using the arrow of time, because you can see all possible spectrums, you can look for disorder, which is heat. So as the sand is falling through the box, they're going to be bumping into each other and running into air or whatever, and they're going to be slightly warmer at the bottom than they were at the top. That gives you the arrow of time. You see what I mean?
Yes.
So that's the description of the arrow of time. In other words, you have to look for the entropy in this system that I've given you in order to determine what was the beginning of it and what is the end.
Right.
And the increase of entropy is measured by disorder in the system, and light coming off as heat is basically considered disorderly.
Right.
So that's my thought experiment on the arrow that just basically trying to give people a picture of how physicists look at the arrow of time and how to, so there's lots of ways to measure entropy, but a really good one is wasted energy as heat.
Yes, because so far as we know, that's the end.
Right. So what's weird to me about the arrow of time and this idea of entropy is that their picture of the beginning of the universe seems to already start out at maximum entropy.
And what do you mean?
In other words, the Big Bang is like a maximum entropic event or whatever, the very nature of it. And yet physicists have to start with this enormous explosion, where everything is incredibly hot, as as minimum entropy, and then go down from there, even though it looks like an enormously entropic event. So how?
Yeah, because it's like it has the description that I like about this idea. Then I know you've heard this one. Is the cream in the coffee.
Oh yeah.
Right. So you start out with, you drop the cream in the coffee, and let's say if you put the cream in the coffee very slowly, it will sit on the bottom. Right. It'll sit at the bottom of the coffee.
Yeah.
And so you got this black and you've got this black coffee and this cream, and they're separated and there's order. Right.
Yeah.
Very low entropy. But then if you start to stir it, you're increasing the entropy, but in the process, you're creating all of this really intricate, these patterns, swirls and all this kind of stuff. It's very complex. So it reaches an apex of complexity before it finally becomes homogeneous within the coffee, and it all turns
maximum chaos.
Yeah, to the maximum, back to like the high entropy is also
very homogeneous.
Yeah. I don't know if you could say ordered, but it's simple.
Right. Okay.
So it goes from being very simple and ordered through this process of entropy becoming incredibly complex on the way to ultimate simplicity, which is the ultimate entropy at the end, where it's all completely mixed together. So we happen to be living in a period of the universe's life, of this process of going from low entropy to high, where everything is incredibly complex. We're in the very beginning stages of the swirling of the cream into the coffee.
Yeah.
So we can look out and see all of this order, what looks to be order, because there are galaxies, there's structures, there's all this, there's these all of these numbers that keep repeating all over the place, these geometric forms. Life comes into existence. And this goes down another path where, physicists and biologists and all these people are theorizing that biology
is the next step.
Is the universe's way of continuing the entropic process.
Yeah.
Because you get these, through the process of entropy, you end up with these stars that end up making these products that are extremely hard to break down.
Through the process of non-organic or non-life entropy. You get products that...
Diamonds and stuff.
Yeah, they can't be broken down.
They're very difficult to break down. But even some of the products that, or the things that life can actually consume and break down, the processes of life that can break down these substances and release them as heat into the universe.
Yeah. So in other words, the universe required life as the next step in chemistry in order to begin breaking down substances that had otherwise been
pretty stable
and can't be broken down by anything other than like slow proton decay or something like that.
I'm totally biased, but this is a lame explanation of life. So lame. How boring can we get is the contest, and they won.
You're right. I never looked at it like that. But so why have I been thinking about this?
I don't know. Tell me. Why have you been thinking about this?
Because what you just illustrated right there, it's just, I don't know. Okay, so the process of entropy in what we see as the universe, the process of entropy is basically a line that goes from maximum order, no matter what it looks like, to maximum disorder. And yet through this process, we go from simple to complicated to simple.
Yes. Yeah.
So I guess maybe the end result is not actually simple. It's just that it's simple to talk about, but the disorder is impossible to describe. But since it's all disorder, it's simple to say.
Yeah.
In other words, you don't have to describe a whole lot of shit. You just say everything is all over the place and nothing is really, there's not a whole lot of orderly information.
Yeah.
But in this idea that most of this will be given off as heat and then slow proton decay and all that kind of stuff, you end up with a very complicated system to actually describe in all its detail. But because everything is like that, you can simply say it's maximum disorder.
Yeah.
So,
see, that's what I like. I think was it Freeman Dyson? I was reading the thing about Freeman Dyson, how he was talking about how intelligence might live on, or was that I can't remember which guy it was. One of these famous maverick scientists that passed away. I was reading these stories about him, and the guy was like, "Look, intelligence could become, as the universe progresses throughout its life." And we were talking about the death of all these stars.
Yeah,
and
the
all
heat death. Yeah.
Yeah. That intelligence may end up becoming these huge macro structures of...
Yes.
Is that Dyson, or who was that?
Dyson talked about it. We were thinking like he was describing Boltzmann brains.
Yeah, Boltzmann brain type things, that would be vast connections of whatever, neutrinos,
electromagnetic
and stuff.
filaments and neutrinos. And
complexity in the mundane, I guess, they would be considered sort of the mundane heat death of the universe. I don't know.
A universe very boring to look at, but nevertheless incredibly complicated.
Yeah, so I mean, this assumption that this heat, this radiation of heat out into the universe is just going to continue on forever and ever and ever and never change into anything else. I mean, it's still quite a big assumption. That's the steady state. Or no, that's whatever the other theory, right? The steady state is that matter is being created and destroyed, and
steady state should be that the universe basically looks like it does now all the time.
Right. because there are ways that energy is turned back into matter, and
Yeah. And that there's that it's basically has to be functionally infinite, and it doesn't have a beginning or an end.
right.
That's steady state.
Still
Steady state shouldn't have an entropic arrow of time, right? It can't. You determine the arrow of time using entropy, and if the universe has to basically look the same, basically, I mean, we're talking in very large generalities here, then you can't have an arrow of time based on entropy. So how would you look at that universe, like going back to the idea of the sand? If I gave you millions of pictures of a steady state universe, how would you figure out which ones were earlier and which ones were later if you can't use entropy?
Yeah, I don't know.
And then, going back to the stuff you were reading earlier about did NASA find a universe that goes backwards in time and all that kind of stuff, then I started thinking about symmetry. So is that what we're looking at? Like, is there some kind of symmetry happening here? Lots of other things in nature seem to have symmetry. So now we're looking at, like, I don't know, two lobes, which is the entire universe. One of them is going one way and the other one's, there's a polarity, in other words.
Yeah. Yeah, so the watcher put up the definition. The arrow of time, also called time's arrow, equally fascinating name, is the concept positing the one-way direction or asymmetry of time. It was developed in 1927 by the British astrophysicist Arthur Eddington and is an unsolved general physics question.
Right.
But yeah, asymmetry of time. That's why I liked the backwards universe tabloid story.
Yeah, it did seem to give it symmetry.
Yep. I don't know.
And in that universe, entropy would be the direction towards order.
I think the problem, this goes back to the measurement problem. Scientists want to measure things and then and only look at a little piece of it and then say, then from this little piece, we should be able to determine the state of the universe, right? Which we were just talking about that. That information is there somehow
in the waves.
Whether or not we have the machinery or the tools to discover it, that's up in the air. But the point is that
the idea of a clockwork universe where you can look at any state of a given system, and given enough information about that state, you can determine any previous or later state of that system.
Yeah. But I mean,
the quantum problem.
I guess my point is that does the instrument recording the passage of the sand experience the sand? Like if there's a timestamp or there's a numerical sequence on each picture, that would be really easy.
Yeah.
That's what we have.
That's right.
Like we as beings in the universe experience time in one direction because we have this sort of numerical.
What amounts to a numerical because we experience it in one direction. Yeah.
Well, do we?
Maybe not.
That's what I'm saying. Like if you removed the camera's ability to record the numbers of the sequence of the photos, then you could say, well, the camera is not experiencing this in any particular order.
Yeah.
You could then look at it and say, well, I can figure out the order, but I can't tell which one's forward or backward.
Right.
But if you put numbers on the photos, then you would know.
Yes, that's right.
But that's what I'm saying. So like we experience the universe in this from beginning to end way. That's how our minds deal with it.
Right. So the purpose of the mind experiment that I was trying to illustrate was that does the universe put numbers on the photos even if the camera doesn't?
That's it.
What?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
That was, I guess that was my point of the whole exercise was like, there do seem to be, well, okay. So you could say it if you're just going to remove all the assumptions, and what you would say is the sequence of numbers that I get out of the data that the camera takes, that the universe is putting in there, merely matches the sequence of numbers that my own senses tell me is the correct direction. In other words, all of our previous observations show us that entropy increases, so I tend to order it from beginning to end with entropy increasing in the pictures.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right way. It just means that this is how we experience the universe. Is that what you're trying to get at?
I guess, yeah. Because I mean, you would have
really cool.
You would have to figure out how the grains of sand were absorbing infrared light, right?
Yeah.
How is these waves or particles of light flying towards each grain of sand as they're going down in the picture sequence, right? That would be going backwards. Would that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. You would have to be like, why are they getting colder? Is that what you're talking? Yeah, they would seem to emanate less infrared if you were going the wrong direction. Because what I was thinking is they're bumping into each other, or whatever, and so they would be a little warmer at the bottom of the fall than at the top, right?
Right.
You know, obviously that doesn't completely, but you would see this trend.
Yeah, you would see them get brighter in terms of the infrared spectrum.
Yeah, however tiny amount that would be.
So the other way around, you would see them getting dimmer,
and you would have to explain where that energy's going.
Right. Well, the energy would be coming into the grain of sand.
That's right.
And they would be getting colder. Boy, this is weird.
Yeah. Like if they're emanating more energy in the infrared, they're heating up and thus sending it out. Right?
Yeah.
And that's a function of like you're turning their potential energy into kinetic energy, and that turns into heat energy, and then it's radiated out as chaos entropy. Maximum entropy there.
Right.
So, but they start out at the top of the fall with some kind of, they have a potential energy. They're not falling yet. This is an orderly energy in terms of, the words don't really work right, but that energy is order compared to what's happening when it's going at the bottom of its fall. Because you can control it. You can do something with it. It's sitting there waiting to happen. Right? This potential, the fact that it's up higher in the gravity well than it would be once you start letting it drop. So once I take that potential energy and turn it into kinetic where it starts to fall, now I've lost some order because the things are happening. As it falls, it bumps into things and it starts to warm up. That's absorption of energy, but that heat is then radiated out as something I can't do anything with unless I catch it with solar cells or something like that. You know, the camera's picking it up and turning some of it back into order by putting them into pictures or whatever, orderly data. But most of that energy is just lost into the system. The box heats up, the air around them heats up. That is all emanated out. It spreads out, and it's like, you can. It's hard to talk about energy in terms of order and disorder, but this is what's happening. So this is why I've been thinking about it, because there's all these weird ramifications of this idea that I'm trying to figure out how big of a stack of assumptions is going on here. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to put the coffee cup back together.
How to separate the
processes that happen when when you break the porcelain cup, right?
Yeah.
You've forever severed these crystalline lattices that you can't make them go back together the way they were without completely melting the whole thing down and doing it again.
Okay.
Crushing it back into powder or whatever, however you would have
full
to do.
recycle. Yeah.
Yeah. Why?
Which requires a whole bunch of other energy.
You got to have all this heat
stuff,
and
you're
all this
burning
kind of
everything off. Yeah, it takes a lot of energy to do that. So to restore that order, you lose a lot.
Yeah, to make these molecules turn into that crystalline lattice structure or whatever. And then once you break it, when it's cold, you sever those connections in those crystalline lattices.
Right.
They
can never regain them.
Cannot regain them without completely crushing them up and starting over. Damn it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really weird. So you can know for sure if you knew, like if you did this sort of same experiment that you had where you had this coffee cup and you smash it and the camera's taking all the pictures of that.
Yeah.
All of the pieces of the cup flying towards each other and perfectly forming together
would give you a huge clue.
Could totally happen. But the final fusing and the crystalline lattices actually
into a single piece,
connecting into a single piece would not happen.
Right.
That would be the key.
Yeah.
If you could understand, in depth, and you could
the camera's magical and can take a picture of all data.
You can look at it on the atomic scale.
That's right. Zoom in and out however much you want. Yes, I agree.
Once you saw that happen, you would know you were going in reverse.
Yeah. Right. So in that experiment, the big clue to the entropic system happens right at the beginning of the break. Mm-hmm. And that gives you the arrow of time. Because, you could say, well, sure. I mean, you could, since I have this magical camera, I could have a magical machine that would throw all these pieces
and they would just perfectly align together.
But when they actually fuse back together into a single object, no, that has to happen at the beginning of this setup.
That's right.
Cool. I don't know why it's like that, but I just want all the other snakes out there to also be laying awake until 4 a.m. thinking about this, which is what I've been doing.
Yeah, it's good.
So, thanks, guys. We'll take another break, and we'll be back for the second half of the show. Second half of the show. Snakes! And we are back. Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
Chilling out.
Half our pyramid's tied behind our backs just to make it square. And we got some stories here. I have this one. This actually came in through the Discord. Really interesting story from sciencealert.com. It's the headline is "A mysterious anomaly under Africa is radically weakening Earth's magnetic field." This is by Peter Dockrell. So it says, above our heads, and by the way, it was posted in 2018, so this is not a news story. Above our heads, something is not right. Earth's magnetic field is in a state of dramatic weakening, and according to mind-boggling new research, this phenomenal disruption is part of a pattern lasting for over 1,000 years. Earth's magnetic field doesn't just give us our north and south poles, it's also what protects us from solar winds and cosmic radiation, but this invisible force field is rapidly weakening to the point that scientists think it could actually flip with our magnetic poles reversing. As crazy as that sounds, this actually does happen over vast stretches of time. The last time it occurred was about 780,000 years ago, although it got close again around 40,000 years back. When it takes place, it's not quick, with the polarity reversal slowly occurring over thousands of years, say all uniformitarians. Nobody knows for sure if another such flip is imminent, and one of the reasons for that is a lack of hard data. The region that concerns scientists the most at the moment is called the South Atlantic Anomaly, a huge expanse of the field stretching from Chile to Zimbabwe. The field is so weak within the anomaly that it's hazardous for Earth satellites to enter it because the additional radiation it's letting through can disrupt their electronics. We've known for quite some time that the magnetic field has been changing, but we didn't really know if this was unusual for this region on a longer timescale or whether it was normal, says physicist Vincent Hare from the University of Rochester in New York. One of the reasons scientists don't know much about the magnetic history of this region of Earth is it lacks what's called archaeomagnetic data, physical evidence of magnetism in Earth's past, preserved in archaeological relics from bygone ages. One such bygone age belonged to a group of ancient Africans who lived in the Limpopo River Valley, which borders on Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Botswana, regions that fall within the South Atlantic anomaly of today. Approximately 1,000 years ago, these Bantu peoples observed an elaborate, superstitious ritual in times of environmental hardship. During times of drought, they would burn down their clay huts and grain bins in a sacred cleansing rite to make the rain come again, never knowing they were performing a kind of preparatory scientific fieldwork for researchers centuries later. How do they know that that's what they were doing?
Don't know.
1,000 years ago, they purposefully burned down their huts and grain bins in a rite to make the rains come again. That seems like... can't we just say that there's stuff burned down? I mean, like, how do you know that there's a superstitious ritual involving and bringing the rain back? Anyway, sorry. Dang it. Freaking. All right. When you burn clay at very high temperatures, you actually stabilize the magnetic minerals. And when they cool from these very high temperatures, they lock in a record of the Earth's magnetic field. One of the team, geophysicist John Tarduno, explains. As such, an analysis of the ancient artifacts that survived these burnings reveals much more than just the cultural practices of the ancestors of today's Southern Africans. We were looking for recurrent behavior of anomalies because we think that's what is happening today and causing the South Atlantic anomaly, Tarduno says. We found evidence that these anomalies have happened in the past, and this helps us contextualize the current changes in the magnetic field. Like a compass frozen in time immediately after the burning, the artifacts revealed that the weakening in the South Atlantic anomaly isn't a standalone phenomenon of history. Similar fluctuations occurred in the years 400 to 450, 700 to 750, and 1225 to 1550 Common Era, and the fact that there's a pattern tells us that the position of the South Atlantic anomaly isn't a geographic fluke. Common Era is AD, is what they're talking about there. If we're getting stronger evidence that there's something unusual about the core mantle boundary under Africa that could be having an important impact on the global magnetic field. The current weakening in Earth's magnetic field, which has been taking place for the last 160 years or so, is thought to be caused by a vast reservoir of dense rock called the African Large Low Shear Velocity Province, which sits about 2,900 kilometers or 1,800 miles below the African continent. It is a profound feature that must be tens of millions of years old, the researchers explained in the conversation last year. While thousands of kilometers across, its boundaries are sharp. This dense region, existing in between the hot liquid iron of Earth's outer core and the stiffer, cooler mantle, is suggested to somehow be disturbing the iron that helps generate the Earth's magnetic field. There's a lot more research to do before we know more about what's going on here. As the researchers explain, the conventional idea of pole reversals is that they can start anywhere in the core, but the latest findings suggest what happens in the magnetic field above us is tied to phenomena at special places in the core mantle boundary. If they are right, a big piece of the field weakening puzzle just fell in our lap, thanks to clay burning rituals from a millennia ago. What this all means for the future, though, no one is certain. We now know this unusual behavior has occurred at least a couple of times before the past 160 years and is part of a bigger long-term pattern, Hare says. However, it is simply too early to say for certain whether this behavior will lead to a full pole reversal.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I guess what they're saying is there's a big chunk of denser stuff that's sort of sitting very close to being basically sitting on, or part of it maybe extending into the liquid iron of the outer core and disrupting its rotation somehow.
Yeah, like a key in a shaft or something.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like the Watcher's take. There's a drought. Burn everything to make rains.
I mean, they told us that in Mesa Verde, too.
That's what he says. Like the Caddo people who burned all their sacred buildings to the ground.
Yeah.
As they left an area, which was also sacred, where they cut down all the trees during a drought.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Geologist. Can a geologist ever come up with a short and simple name? The sharp, sheer, super dense, mineralized, heavy metallic, shelf barrier, interactive space. That's right. Yeah, they have. I mean, it's not as cool as the South Atlantic anomaly. That's a pretty cool name.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, African Large Low Shear Velocity Province is what they called it. Large Low. Okay.
Well, I don't have any geology news to follow that up, but I have this one from Science Daily. Scientists find brain center that profoundly shuts down pain. So this is
Profoundly
shuts down pain.
This is philosophically profound.
A Duke University research. This is from. Did I say? This is from Science Daily.
Science Daily.
Okay. And this is kind of cool. I kind of like this site. They set up their news stories very much like a scientific paper. It's got like an abstract in the beginning.
Oh, good.
Summary, basically. And no pop-ups on the
helpful.
website. I mean, on the mobile site.
Yeah.
Very nice. A Duke University research team has found a small area of the brain in mice that can profoundly control the animal's sense of pain. Somewhat unexpectedly, this brain center turns pain off, not on. It's also located in an area where few people would have thought to look for an anti-pain center. The amygdala, which is often considered the home of negative emotions and responses, like the fight or flight response and general anxiety. People do believe there is a central place to relieve pain. That's why placebos work, said a lead author in the study. The question is, where in the brain is the center that can turn off pain? Most of the previous studies have focused on which regions are turned on by pain. But there are so many regions processing pain, you'd have to turn them all off to stop pain. Whereas this one center can turn off the pain by itself. The work is a follow-up to earlier research where they were looking at neurons that are activated rather than suppressed by general anesthetics. In a 2019 study, they found that general anesthesia promotes slow-wave sleep by activating the supraoptic nucleus of the brain. But sleep and pain are separate, an important clue that led to the new finding, which appears online May 18th in Nature Neuroscience. So that's pretty cool. It's like they're thinking about the possibility. They're doing these tests on mice.
Like if we want to operate on you, can we just shut down all of your pain
Yes.
centers and just we can operate?
They're looking at the possibility of drugs that actually just turn it off rather than. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, give me some of them pills. Turn that pain off.
Pills.
That's pretty cool. Let's see what else. The amygdala, folks.
Yeah.
So, maybe these pills will enlarge the amygdala so that we can turn our pain off better.
We're all going to have swollen amygdalas. That's what they want.
So this is pretty cool. This is from earthmysterynews.com. Freaky active object in Jupiter's orbit.
Well, wait, can we, I want to,
Oh, I'm jumping around.
well, no. I want to think about I'm just thinking about the philosophical or possible implications of, like, what if it doesn't turn back on? I don't know how it works. It's like a switch. So if you stop taking the drug, maybe it'll start working again. But is it something that can be reversed?
Yeah, I think
And
in the study, they were messing around with this region of the brain, testing mice. And they were able... Okay.
And what kind of pain? Like would it
Activated
work?
neurons.
Let's say, for example, would it work on somebody who just had their heart broken? Does it work on that kind of pain? Because we're talking about amygdala here is like a pain. It's like a center for emotional pain. Like, in other words, does it work on emotional pain? Like, if you gave it to somebody, would they just not care about anything anymore because zero pain free?
All right, well, let's read further. Let's find out.
And you can't tell that with mice, I guess. Can't really talk to them about emotional pain,
That's true.
right?
Yeah. The researchers found that general anesthesia also activates a specific subset of inhibitory neurons in the central amygdala, which they have called the SEAGA. It's, capital C-E, capital A-G-A. SEAGA?
Seaga? I don't know.
Okay. They've called the SEAGA neurons. SEAGA, here we go, stands for central amygdala. GA indicates activation by GA, okay, G-A,
Yeah.
letters G-A, indicates activation by general anesthesia. Mice have a relatively larger central amygdala than humans, but the research suggests there's no reason to think we have a different system for controlling pain. Using technologies at the lab, that the lab has pioneered to track the paths of activated neurons in mice, the team found the Seaga was connected to many different areas of the brain, which was a surprise. By giving mice a mild pain stimulus, the researchers could map all of the pain-activated brain regions. They discovered that at least 16 brain centers known to process the sensory or emotional aspects of pain were receiving inhibitory input from the Seaga. Pain is a complicated brain response. It involves sensory discrimination, emotion, and autonomic involuntary nervous system responses. Treating pain by dampening all of these brain processes in many areas is very difficult to achieve, but activating a key node that naturally sends inhibitory signals to these pain processing regions would be more robust. Using a technology called optogenetics, which uses light to activate a small population of cells in the brain, the researchers found they could turn off the self-carrying behaviors a mouse exhibits when it feels uncomfortable by activating the Seaga neurons. Paw licking or face wiping behaviors were completely abolished the moment the light was switched on to activate the anti-pain center. It is so drastic, they just instantaneously stopped licking and rubbing. Wow. When the scientists dampened the activity of these Seaga neurons, the mice responded as if temporary insult had become intense or painful again. They also found that low-dose ketamine, an anesthetic drug that allows sensation but blocks pain, activated the Seaga center and wouldn't work without it. I'm not sure what they mean by that. Okay. The ketamine wouldn't work if the Seaga center wasn't activated.
Oh, it didn't work if it... Yeah, okay.
So now the researchers are going to look for drugs that can activate only these cells to suppress pain as potential future painkillers. The other thing they're trying to do is to...
but didn't they just say they're using light? How could that be a pill?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it just says that they're going to look for drugs that can activate only these cells. They're using light to activate them, I guess.
Okay.
So yeah, the drug will probably have all kinds of side effects, like...
All right, just hit me with a laser. All right, Watcher says he's got some stuff to say.
Yeah, come on, buddy.
Come on, yeah.
Floating in a tin.
So the first thing I find pretty interesting on this is that it ties into, once again, the things that happen in the brain under anesthesia, which a few episodes back, maybe 10 or 20 now, probably even longer than that. Where's the time gone? When I talked about people in long-term chemically induced comas being brought out of the coma due to these new complexes, which happened under anesthesia. It's kind of another thing that's really interesting when we shut down all the noise of consciousness, what things we can see that are in the background. I find the link with the amygdala really interesting because, like they said towards the end of the article, there's a lot of emotion tied into pain. Like if you have chronic pain, you can be short-tempered, you can be irritable, you can snap at people, and that's common.
Yeah, we know.
Pretty much. Right. So for there to be a pathway that works back in the opposite direction makes total sense. And it's funny, as Kyle was reading the article, I was actually saying to myself, I was like, this is going to be in the amygdala. Right when he says, you're not going to guess where, I was like, it's going to be the amygdala. Wow. The ketamine thing is also very interesting. So ketamine is typically used in a surgical setting in hospitals, psych wards, because if you need to cause someone to calm down and basically go limp so that they don't hurt themselves or others, you snow them with ketamine. And then the last would be ambulances. The 911 services use more ketamine than anybody else because it will put somebody into essentially a hypnotic state where their vital signs are unperturbed, but they're essentially just staring straight into space.
Huh. But it's a painkiller, but not the same kind as like an opiate, basically. Is that what you're saying? It doesn't work?
Right. It actually acts along a pathway more similar to mescaline.
Wow.
Yeah, which is it's really strange.
But what does this have to do with the coma stuff? Like, how did you make that connection?
That it's involving anesthesia. These are things they noticed when people were anesthetized.
Okay.
And the coma thing was once somebody was basically flatlined in brain activity, if you further anesthetize them, in that case with Ambien, which acts along a very similar pathway to ketamine, it's a hypnotic, they would start to actually, ping brain waves, and it was like they were coming back, which is, again, super interesting. Don't know what to do with it, but really interesting.
That's offensive.
What?
I'm trying to enlarge my amygdala so I can think.
But yeah, like, there's how, I guess you can imagine, because most opiates, they don't kill pain, right? They do something else.
Right. What opiates do in general is they cause a neurological ignoring of impulse coming back to you.
Yeah.
So it's registering. It's just sort of attenuating the impulse.
Yeah.
So your nerves is they're all still saying, "Ouch, this hurts," but instead it sounds like, "Ouch, this kind of hurts."
Yeah. Your brain is like plugging its ears, basically.
Right.
But imagine
like
if you
Neurontin actually cut the nerve signal. The problem with Neurontin is it interferes with almost all your nervous signals, and you walk around like a zombie, and sometimes you like pass out. So it's not really the best.
Yeah, and I mean that's going to be the case with all serious painkillers. I mean, if you just knock out your pain,
then you're going to hurt yourself more.
Yeah, there's going to be
Right.
problems with that. So you don't want to completely do it, but it would be quite nice if it could be targeted.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, so if they're searching for a drug to be able to do this, what they would have to have first is a chemical that can actually interact across the blood-brain barrier and a bunch of other stuff that's not all that interesting. But it should, in theory, be able to be turned back on as long as it doesn't need an active switch to be flipped. Meaning that if it acts based on a
stimulus,
a receptor where once the chemical is bound to the receptor, you have an interrupt, but as soon as it releases, it goes back to normal, or would you actually have to have a secondary chemical come in and reactivate the whole pathway?
Right.
Which, if that's the case, terrifying. I hope they never do it. But if it's the first way, that's great. That's totally okay.
Right, but it would be great for like in hospital operations if you could just use light to completely turn off the pain center while you're doing the operation.
Oh yeah, dude. And I mean, far beyond that, if you think in terms of a history of, you've got to like try to light up certain parts of the brain while you're going in and diagnosing neurological conditions. Why? Well, because you can't have somebody awake if their head's cut open and you're poking it with needles.
Yeah.
But what if you could?
Yeah.
And when you hit a certain region, they start speaking gibberish, and you're like, okay, I'm in the language center. Let's put a little X there. It would make it a lot easier.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's interesting. It's a good point there, Watcher.
Yep. That is a good point. All right,
let's go back to space.
Yeah.
EarthMysteryNews.com. Freaky active object in Jupiter's orbit is first of its kind, seen by astronomers. It's neither an asteroid nor a comet, but something in between. It's also parked within Jupiter's orbit, making this object the first of its kind ever to be detected. The source here is Gizmodo, which I was kind of curious about. But anyway, say hello to 2019 LD2, the only active Jupiter Trojan known to science. Trojans are a large group of asteroids located in the same orbital path as Jupiter, and they're all dead, inert asteroids. Well, except apparently this one, which now boasts a very comet-like tail, according to a press release put out by the University of Hawaii's Institute for Astronomy. Small-bodied celestial objects tend to be categorized as either asteroids or comets. Asteroids are fairly boring, but comets, often described as dirty snowballs, shed their volatile surface materials when venturing close to the sun. This creates a visible tail and a glowing coma around the nucleus. But there's a kind of in-between class of objects known as active asteroids. These are asteroids that have suddenly sprung to life, such as the self-destructive, wildly spinning asteroid 6478 Gault. As its name suggests, 2019 LD2 was discovered last year, specifically in early June. It was spotted by astronomers at University of Hawaii's Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, ATLAS, which is typically used to find Earth-threatening objects. Sometimes, however, it finds harmless astronomical curiosities like this one. When 2019 LD2 was first spotted, its fuzzy appearance led to suspicions that it might be a comet, or at least comet-like. A collaborating team from the Queen's University Belfast supported these suspicions. A second set of ATLAS observations in July 2019 strengthened the case, with images revealing a faint comet-like tail, likely composed of gas and dust. Observations in late 2019 and early 2020 showed that 2019 LD2 remains active, according to the press release. Active asteroids are rare, but the discovery of an active Jupiter Trojan is unprecedented. The gas giant has two massive swarms of asteroids along its orbital path, one out in front and one behind. Jupiter amassed these celestial groupies over 1 billion years ago, thanks to its tremendous charm, otherwise known as gravity. 2019 LD2 is located in the Trojan clump ahead of the planet. I had no idea that this was a thing. Like, it's got these massive clusters of asteroids in front and behind in its orbital path, just following it around and leading it.
Yeah, but they're
really interesting.
If you look at the orbital circle, like from the top down, so if the sun's in the middle and you're looking top down, put Jupiter directly north of the sun.
12 o'clock.
Yeah. Then those two Trojan points are going to be in an equilateral triangle on the other parts of the orbit.
Interesting. Are they're Lagrangian points or?
No, they're not the Lagrange points. They're
something else.
It's something else, yeah. The Trojan points it's where gravity equals out in that orbit. Yeah, it's weird.
That's really
I don't think they're connected with the Lagrange points. I could be wrong, but I think the Trojans are directly on the orbit, whereas the Lagrange points have to do with other bodies.
Okay. It's really strange.
Yeah.
This discovery is a bit perplexing because Trojan asteroids, due to their extreme age, should have surfaces sucked dry of volatile materials like water ice. They should be dead and boring, like the vast majority of other asteroids, but the discovery of a lone active Trojan suggests something else might be going on, namely the sudden exposure of deeper materials into to the surface. We have believed for decades that Trojan asteroids should have large amounts of ice beneath their surfaces, but never had any evidence until now, said Alan Fitzsimmons, an astronomy professor at Queen's University Belfast, who's been studying 2019 LD2, in the press release. ATLAS has shown that the predictions of their icy nature may well be correct. As to how these deeper layers became exposed, the object could have experienced a landslide or smashed into a smaller asteroid. Another possibility is that this object only recently joined the Trojan community, having drifted in from farther away, where it was able to retain its surface volatiles. The scientists don't know, but they're going to keep their eye on 2019 LD2. Excitingly, NASA will be launching a probe to visit the Trojan asteroids. Called Lucy, the spacecraft will investigate a half dozen Trojans between 2027 and 2033. This mission will shed new light on these mysterious objects, including their chemical composition and how they found themselves within Jupiter's orbital path.
So it's going to be going to Jovian Trojans.
Yes. What did I say?
No, I was just asking. Because it said they were just going to go look at Trojans, but there are Trojans.
Visit the Trojan asteroids, yeah. So, yeah. But I found that I had no idea about those. And that is really interesting that just suddenly one starts outgassing,
Yeah.
And it looks like it's got a little cometary tail.
Yeah, how did that happen? Yeah, so Watcher, you've posted a picture up here of Lagrange points. Are those the same as Trojan points? Because yeah, you've got L2 through L1 through L5 there. Are those the same as the Trojan points? That's the question. I couldn't remember if that was right or not. But yeah, maybe what they're talking about is L4 and L5. Oh, okay, yeah, it is L4 and L5. So I was wrong. The triangle is with the sun, including the sun.
Oh, okay.
Not the entire orbit.
That's really cool. Man, look at that asteroid belt.
Yeah.
Does it have these?
Not to scale.
Does it have these points, these clusters as well? Like it's got 2 or 3 clustered areas?
I don't think so. Because it has clustered areas, but the Lagrange points are made by the interaction of the gravity of whatever object is in orbit, the planet plus the sun. If we scroll up there, you can see his thing of the Lagrangian points, and you can see how they relate to the interaction between the orbit and the sun and the planet.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay. So
But all planets have these. Sorry.
go ahead.
All planets and any orbiting system, so Earth and its moon have these points as well. They're just not nearly as strong. But Earth has them set up with the sun and the moon.
So the moon has like chunks of rocks and stuff out there between
In its orbit, yeah.
around the Earth.
I
Or
think
is this
so, yeah. Well,
related to the sun?
the Lagrange points between the Earth and the moon may be too small
Okay.
to actually hold anything, but there are definitely points on the moon's orbit where that could happen. It's easier to happen there. Yeah.
That's really cool. All right, I'm jumping around here. I got.
Well, we're about out of time for this segment, so maybe we should.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Yep. Phone down.
But yeah, I think that the idea of these points it's interesting because stuff can get caught there and then it can sit there for a long time. If it works just right, something can get in there. And then if there's basically you got this clump of stuff and it has to be moving at the same orbital velocity as Jupiter, which it's of course, right? Anything in orbit at that same has to have the same speed.
Yeah.
But if they nudge each other, the slightest bump can push it out, and then it can start drifting inwards or outwards. And then it can become dangerous. Now, this system is incredibly stable because it's very, very old, and nothing has changed in a really long time. But Trojan points are fragile, so it doesn't take much to nudge something out of it.
Yeah, if you had a comet come in and its tail started impacting all these little objects in there, it could disrupt
slowing them down, and then they would fall inwards. Yeah,
very cool. All right, well, I'll take another break.
Yep.
And I'll open up one of them ice cold beers.
Yes.
Fastest 2+ hours in podcasting. Brothers of the Serpent podcast. We've been in here in the cube for quite some time. Still feels like it's going by fast.
It does.
And yes, we'll be going a little long, but I got more stories. And I also have I don't know how well I'm going to be able to put this together, but...
Well, first let me clear this up. I just wanted to look this up. So Trojan points and Lagrange points.
Okay.
Objects found orbiting at the L4 and L5 points are often called Trojans. After the 3 large asteroids, Agamemnon, Achilles, and Hector, that orbit the L4 and L5 points of the Jupiter-Sun system. So, in other words, these points are all called Lagrange points. These places where gravity basically equals 0 in the system, so stuff can get caught there and float. 2 of them are on the orbit of whatever smaller body is in the system. Usually the sun, or maybe the planet with its primary, or the moon with its planet. So the 2 that are on the orbit are the Trojan points, but all 5 of the points are called Lagrange points.
Okay.
So Trojan points are Lagrange points. Lagrange points are what they're all called. So that clears it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sort of.
Sort of. So this is a question I would like to pose to I can't remember his name. Guy emailed. Used to be a mathematician,
I gotta look this
physicist. I was saying I want to ask you some questions
up. I
about
can find this out.
mathematics.
Mather.
So I'm interested in
Matt.
Matt.
Matt the math guy.
Yeah. Anybody that can help me with this question. I'm fascinated by gravity. What the heck is going on? And I'm also fascinated by acoustical physics, waves, propagation of sound. And so in learning about sound, I see all these similarities in the way these waves interact. Obviously, it is the similarities are in the way light acts. And I wonder, is this... Does this these tendencies for these waves that are propagating in a medium or in medii, I don't know plural of the mediums, media. Does gravity work in the same way? And I'm not talking about gravitational waves. I'm talking about gravity itself.
Yeah.
So this is just from Wikipedia. Radio propagation. I'm just going to read this first part. Radio propagation is the behavior of radio waves as they travel or are propagated from one point to another or into various parts of the atmosphere. As a form of electromagnetic radiation, like light waves, radio waves are affected by the phenomena of reflection, refraction, diffraction, absorption, polarization, and scattering. Now, the fact that they refract, we've talked about this before, light waves refract.
Yep.
Radio waves refract. Refraction is the quote-unquote bending of light, which is not a bending of light, or bending necessarily. It's when a wave goes from one medium to another, where the properties of that medium cause the wave to speed up. Or slow down. Its wavelength becomes longer or shorter, so that the frequency remains the same, but the wavelength changes because the speed of the propagation of the wave changes. So the fact that light does this suggests to me that it's not a constant, right? And maybe in the vacuum of space it's a constant, but when it enters water, it changes speed. Therefore, this is hard to describe, but if it's coming at an exact 90 perpendicular to the surface of the medium that it's entering, you won't see it quote unquote bend.
Yeah, there will be no obvious refraction.
But it does change the wavelength. Mm-hmm. If it's coming in at an angle, because there's a curved front of the wave, like the front of the wave, or the wave front is curved, it hits that medium surface at an angle and begins to speed up at the bottom, at the lowest point of the curve where it's entering that medium. The rest of the curve is still traveling in the other medium slower as the wave front at the bottom speeds up. So it changes the direction of the propagation of the wave. And that's what results in the phenomenon of refraction. How we can see if you put your hand down into the water, but you're not looking directly down onto it, you're looking from the side. It looks like your hand's kind of sticking out at the wrong angle.
Your fingers bend in the wrong place.
Yes.
Yeah. And that, you're basically, because the wave of light is not all entering the water at the same time.
That's right.
And so, but because there's a speed up or slow down involved in them in it entering the water, it changes direction.
It changes direction.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. How do particles do this? That's not the question I want to ask.
It's a good question.
Anyway,
though.
the point of even bringing up the refraction part is because this is just one of the things that it acts like it's a wave, right? And then it also doesn't have an ultimate speed because it can speed up and slow down entering other media,
Yeah.
which suggests to me that it's traveling in a medium. But, you know, hey, look, I'm just a podcasting guy. So when it comes to gravity, I wonder, I look at cymatics and I wonder when you see the sand on the Chladni plate bouncing off of the standing wave area going to a nodal line. And the nodal line is not moving, so all the quote unquote matter collects there at the nodal lines. It just occurred to me that maybe that's what is happening out here in these planets and the stars and such. It's actually the matter is being thrown off of a standing wave patterns, a complex standing wave patterns into these nodal points in three-dimensional space by this thing we call gravity. So one way to test this is with the math, right? We have, I don't know exactly what the proper terminology is, but the inverse square law, this applies to the propagation of waves as well. In many different ways, when you're looking at acoustic waves or radio waves, the strength of the wave of a radio wave, for example, is inversely proportional to the square of the distance from the point source. That's one way to describe it. The curves of a wave in acoustical oscillations they follow this inverse square law. So gravity does the same thing. So I'm wondering if, like we're talking about these Lagrange points, that there's a place between, say, the sun and Earth, where the sun's quote unquote pull is equal to the Earth's pull, and that position is closer to the Earth than the sun.
Yeah.
Which is really strange. It's really strange. But I'm just wondering if you imagine as a mathematician, like you to figure out the energy that it's going to take off from the surface of the Earth and reach this Lagrange point, right? Where you're this point where you're being pulled equally by the sun and the Earth. You would use the inverse square law to figure out
where it was, yeah,
the masses of the planets and all this kind of stuff. So I'm kind of wondering, does it matter in the math if you reverse the ideas of where the energy is coming from, where the source of the gravitational energy is coming from? We imagine it, or current science imagines it being due to the mass of the planet or the sun, and there's this pulling force, and it's pulling everything down. I'm wondering, does it matter if you flip it and say there's a pushing force out there in empty space? It's pushing towards the Earth, pushing towards the sun, similar to the Chladni plate, pushing the particles of sand off of this oscillating standing wave pattern down to a nodal point. So would that look different? Would the math look different if that were the case? That's what I'm wondering.
Right. So in this scenario, you would have to, if you're doing the math, just forget how it works and say, does the math look the same? Right. Basically, is how you would start with, like, can this be a pushing force? And if so, does the math all still work?
Yeah, you would say that empty space out there where it doesn't look like there's anything going on is actually the source. That's the apex of the energetic wave.
Yeah.
So forget where the energy is coming from, all that kind of stuff. Just do the math.
Yeah.
Does it work? Does it tell you the same, give you the same answers?
Right. Yeah. And so for people listening, like, one way to imagine this Lagrange point between the Earth and the sun, and we were talking about this before we started the show. Basically, if you ignoring all the orbital stuff and just like picture the Earth and the sun. You leave the Earth with a rocket and you're flying towards the sun. The Lagrange point is the point at which you stop falling towards the Earth and start falling towards the sun. Like once you pass it, basically. That's the simplest way to explain it. And in physics, the reason it's closer to the Earth than a lot closer to the Earth than the sun is because the Earth's gravity is much weaker than the sun's. And since there's this whole inverse square law where the strength of the gravity gets a lot weaker as you get away from the object, the place
at an exponential rate.
At an exponential rate, the place where the sun's gravity and the Earth's gravity basically cancel each other out is a lot closer to the Earth than the sun, because you have to be really far away from the sun so its gravity's a lot weaker, and really close to the Earth so its gravity's a lot stronger.
Yes.
So there's a place there called L1 where gravity equals 0 in the Earth-Sun system. And if you can fly there and sort of stop, you can hang out there forever.
Yeah.
If you're very careful and nothing bumps into you.
You have to be right on that point.
Right.
And excluding all tidal forces and stuff.
Yeah. But the slightest nudge in either direction and you will eventually fall into that other body.
Right. The other weird thought experiment we were doing was we were trying to imagine, like, okay, you got two guys. There's one real big guy, heavy guy, and one real small, light guy. And they have a rope. And you put them out in space, and there's no gravitational pull or whatever. Then you spin these guys.
Bolo
right?
them.
Bolo them. There's going to be a point where the rope there's a point on the rope that's basically stationary.
Right.
And that's going to be much closer to the big
really
guy.
big guy than the little one. And so you're like, wait, we're simulating gravity using centrifugal force now, and that moves the Lagrange point towards the fat guy.
And it's just really strange that if these two objects are both pulling, why is there a place where you get to where there's like seemingly no pull between them? It's just, I don't know.
Right. And the other thing we were talking about, that we were asking about, is this: if the source of the pull is actually the two bodies, in other words, they're, the center of mass of these, so Earth and the sun, the source of gravity is the center of mass of these objects. How can they pull on each other if right in the middle somewhere there is a gravity equals 0 spot?
That's really, yeah.
How is the pull being enacted if it has to pass through a place where it equals 0?
It's really strange.
That implies that the force of gravity of the Earth and the sun in some way cannot interact with each other when you're talking about that two-body system.
Right.
The only way the sun can continue pulling on the Earth is if it doesn't care that there's a place where it's totally being canceled out.
Yeah. It's really strange. There's a lot of weird questions. We went on a deep dive on that one,
I
too.
think we need some beers for this.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Which one of these do you want?
Give me the big one.
One standing up?
No, the one laying down.
This one laying down.
Okay, I'm drinking this American brown ale.
Okay, I'm taking District 6 IPA.
All right, buddy.
It's got a big maze on it, which is why I want to drink it. You get lost in this maze.
Oh yeah, Pulpit Supply. That's good.
Ooh yeah, that is good.
Let me try that.
Whoops.
I'm not normally an IPA guy.
Splash some beers on my mic.
I was looking at all these IPAs. I'm like, I'm gonna have to develop a.
Okay, this is brown ale.
Actually,
yeah,
no,
that's
that's
smooth.
pretty good.
Yeah, it's got some serious citrus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
these are good.
Heck yeah, buddy. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Brew pasta.
Brew pasta.
All right. So
Beers from church.
I hope I explained that. I hope we got through that well. You can write us an email and tell me you can't even do it because I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Right, but I think what we're asking is for some guy who knows math to tell us why we're wrong.
I just want to know if you can do the math and pretend that it's a pushing force
Yes,
coming from elsewhere.
Right.
And does the math look the same? That's what I want to know.
that's right. So should I do this one on the Dead Sea Scrolls, or you got one?
Yeah, I think what we should do is end with the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Rosetta Stone.
Okay.
Let's get into some I mean, the stick to the pyramids crowd's got to be freaking going nuts right now.
That's right. What is this arrow of time spacecraft? Get back to the pyramids. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yes. We need a church key for the Brewpastor beers. That's great. Good point, Watcher.
Good point, Watcher. All right. This is from phys.org, as in physics. Not fizzy like beer. It's called the Piecing Together the Dead Sea Scrolls with DNA Evidence. I thought this was really cool. It's a pretty short article, though. The collection of more than 25,000 fragments of ancient manuscripts known as the Dead Sea Scrolls include, among other ancient texts, the oldest copies of the books of the Hebrew Bible. But finding a way to piece them all together in order to understand their meaning has remained an incredibly difficult puzzle, especially given that most pieces weren't excavated in an orderly fashion. Now, researchers reporting in the journal Cell on June 2nd have used an intriguing clue to help in this effort: DNA fingerprints lifted from the animal skins on which the texts were written.
Wow.
Because, yeah, most of the texts are in little pieces. You know, even if they were rolled up, they're just like fragments now, almost dustifying.
Yeah.
And then a lot of them went out to private collectors, and then they've been slowly trying to purchase all these pieces back from all these people that collected them. And then they're all mixed up. And so they've been trying to use purely textual clues to link them together, or shape, right? Put them together like a puzzle, but it's just, there's too many. 25,000 fragments, right? So now they're like, well, wait a minute. They're made out of animal skin. So they're doing DNA tests, and they're like, this is from the same sheep. So it probably comes from the same text, right?
Brilliant.
The discovery of the 2,000-year-old Dead Sea Scrolls is one of the most important archaeological discoveries ever made, says Oded Rekavi of Tel Aviv University in Israel. However, it poses two major challenges. First, most of them were not found intact, but rather disintegrated into thousands of fragments, which had to be sorted and pieced together with no prior knowledge on how many pieces have been lost forever, or, in the case of non-biblical compositions, how the original text should read. Depending on the classification of each fragment, the interpretation of any given text could change dramatically, he says. The second challenge is that most of the scrolls were acquired not directly from 11 Qumran caves. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Qumran? Qumran. Qumran? I don't know how to say it. Near the Dead Sea, but through antiquity dealers. As a result, it's not clear where many of the fragments came from in the first place, making it that much more difficult to put them together and into their proper historical context. Since their discovery, mainly in the late 1940s and 1950s, scholars tried to put them together like a jigsaw puzzle, relying primarily on visible properties of the fragments in order to learn about their relationship to other fragments. In the new study, Rekavi and colleagues, including Noam Mizrahi, Tel Aviv University, Israel, and Matthias Jacobson, Uppsala University, Sweden. Jacobson? Maybe? It looks like, yeah, it's probably Jacobson. Uppsala University, Sweden, decided to look for deeper clues. From each piece, they extracted ancient DNA of the animals that were used to make the parchments. Then, using a forensic-like analysis, they worked to establish the relationship between the pieces based on that DNA evidence and on scrutiny of the language within the texts under investigation. The DNA sequences revealed that the parchments were mostly made from sheep, which wasn't known. The researchers then reasoned that pieces made from the skin of the same sheep must be related, and that scrolls from closely related sheep were more likely to fit together than those from more different sheep or other species.
Good God. Can you imagine buy a puzzle at the store? You're like, oh yeah, puzzle. Start putting it together and you're like, well, we're going to have to do DNA tests on every one of these puzzle pieces first. Just to figure out which side of the puzzle they go. I mean, good God.
All right, Watcher says it's Qumran. Qumran. But yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
like 4D puzzle, right?
Golly.
The researchers stumbled onto an interesting case in which two pieces thought to belong together were in fact made from different animals, sheep and cow. This suggests they don't belong together at all. The most notable example came from scrolls that comprise different copies of the biblical prophetic book of Jeremiah, which are also some of the oldest known scrolls. Analysis of the text on these Jeremiah pieces suggests that they not only belong to different scrolls, they also represent different versions of the prophetic book, says Mizrahi. The fact that the scrolls are most divergent textually are also made of different animal species is indicative that they originate at a different provenance. Most likely, he explains, the cow fragments were written elsewhere because it wasn't possible to raise cows in the Judean desert. The discovery also has larger implications. I thought this was really cool. The researchers write that the fact that different versions of the book circulated in parallel suggests that the holiness of the biblical book did not extend to its precise wording, which is in contrast to the mutually exclusive texts that were adopted later by Judaism and Christianity, they note. This teaches us about the way this prophetic text was read at the time and also holds clues to the process of the text's evolution, he says. Other highlights include insight into the relationship among different copies of a non-biblical liturgical work known as the Songs of the Sabbath Sacrifice, found in both Qumran and Masada. The analysis shows that the various copies found in different Qumran caves are closely related genetically, but the Masada copy is distinct. The findings suggest that this work had a wider currency in the period. What we learn from the scrolls is probably relevant also to what happened in the country at the time, Mizrahi says. As the Songs of the Sabbath Sacrifice foreshadows revolutionary developments in poetic design and religious thinking, this conclusion has implications for the history of Western mysticism and Jewish liturgy. The evidence also confirmed that some other fragments of uncertain origin likely came from other places and not the Qumran caves. In one case, the DNA evidence suggests a fragment from a copy of the biblical book of Isaiah, one of the most popular books in ancient Judea, likely came from another site, which suggests to the researchers the potential existence of an additional place of discovery that still awaits identification. That part I was like, yes! Although DNA evidence adds to understanding, it can only reveal part of the picture and not solve all the mysteries, Rakavi says. The researchers had to extract DNA from tiny amounts of materials, what they refer to as scroll dust in certain cases, and say there are also many scrolls that have yet to be sampled and others that can't be for fear it might ruin them. Nevertheless, the researchers hope that more samples will be tested and added to the database to work toward a more complete Dead Sea Scroll genome. Beers.
Yep. Oh, beer word in there.
They now think that they can apply the same methods to any ancient artifact that contains enough intact DNA or perhaps other biological molecules.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, remember the story about the Copper Scroll?
Yes.
And I talked about all these other locations where
Yeah.
stuff is buried, including another Copper Scroll.
Yeah.
Which might be in the back of a cave with a bunch of the, the other texts.
All these
made
scene documents in it. Yep.
So cool. But that's, that kind of explains why probably, some of these, you read some of these verses from these weird, obscure ancient texts, and it's like, and from on high there came down pillars and donkeys and chairs and so on, and then everything was wonderful. And you're like, where did all that stuff in the middle come from? It's like some fragment that they were like, yeah, this goes there.
Right. They were putting the pieces together wrong, basically. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Like some of the stuff you read, like it's kind of out there.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make any sense and might be being put together wrong.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess this is the last story of the evening. This is from ancientorigins.net. This is a long one. The Rosetta Stone. This is from the 31st of May, 2020, by, not sure how to pronounce this guy's name, but Dwity.
Dwity.
DHWTY. The Rosetta Stone, one of archaeology's greatest treasures. The Rosetta Stone is one of the most significant discoveries in the history of archaeology. This artifact was created during the Ptolemaic period and was rediscovered at the end of the 18th century. Thanks to the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs could be deciphered, unveiling secrets of the ancient civilization. The man credited with this achievement is the French scholar Jean-François Champollion, though the story involves several other scholars as well. These men, however, are often forgotten, being overshadowed by Champollion. Looking from another angle, the tale of the Rosetta Stone is also one of the French-British rivalry during the Napoleonic era. As a result of this rivalry, even though the artifact was discovered by the French, it ended up in the British Museum. What is the Rosetta Stone? The Rosetta Stone is a block of black-colored granodiorite with an irregular shape. The stone is thought to be a fragment of a larger stele, which had been broken in antiquity. The other fragments of the stele, however, have yet to be found. The Rosetta Stone measures about 1 meter, or 3 feet, in height, and about 0.75 meters, or 2.5 feet, in width. The stone contains 3 different scripts: ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs on the top, Demotic in the middle, and Greek on the bottom. All 3 texts tell the same story. Therefore, understanding one script would enable a scholar to decipher the others. It was thanks to this trilingual script that Champollion succeeded in deciphering the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. The story of the Rosetta Stone's discovery begins in 1798 when Napoleon Bonaparte invaded Egypt. The French intended to seize Egypt, which was then a province of the Ottoman Empire, though it was in fact controlled by the Mamluks. Don't know who they are, but Napoleon also hoped to use Egypt as a base to disrupt Britain's access to India. The French easily seized Alexandria and Cairo from the Mamluks. In the following year, the French launched an expedition into Palestine and Syria, which came to an end when they failed to take Acre. I'm not sure how to pronounce that either.
Acre?
Acre. It was in that...
Acre? Yeah, I don't know how to say it either.
It was in that year that the Rosetta Stone was unearthed. In the middle of July 1799, the French were repairing a dilapidated fort, which they renamed Fort Julien, near the port of the city of Rashid on Egypt's north coast. The French referred to the city as Rosetta. During the renovations on the fort, a military engineer by the name of Pierre Francien Bouchard noticed that a stone found in the fort was covered with writing. Bouchard was convinced of the artifact's importance, so it was sent to the Institut d'Egypte, Egyptian Scientific Institute in Cairo. Napoleon is said to have inspected the Rosetta Stone himself before his return to France in August that year. The Rosetta Stone was regarded by the French as a trophy of war, but it never made it back to Paris. The French did not occupy Egypt for long as they surrendered to the British and Ottoman forces in 1801. One of the objects seized from the French by the victorious British was the Rosetta Stone. The artifact was transported back to England. Interestingly, the British left their mark on, or vandalized, depending on one's point of view, the Rosetta Stone. 2 inscriptions in white can be seen on the broken edges of the stone, one on the left and another on the right. The former reads, "Captured in Egypt by the British Army in 1801." And the latter proclaims, "Presented by King George III." Subsequently, the Rosetta Stone arrived in the British Museum in London. The artifact has been exhibited there since then, except during the period of the First World War when it was temporarily relocated to an off-site underground spot for safekeeping. After some time, white chalk was used to color the inscriptions in order to make them more legible. Apart from that, copies and transcripts of the ancient scripts were made so that they may be studied by scholars around the world. At that time, the hieroglyphic and demotic scripts of the Rosetta Stone were still undeciphered. Thus, the Greek inscription was a starting point for scholars. Although ancient Greek was already widely known among Western scholars of that time, translating the text was still a challenge since the Greek of the Rosetta Stone was of a variety that scholars were not familiar with yet. In any case, several scholars managed to translate the Greek portion of the Rosetta Stone, which paved the way for the decipherment of the other two scripts. Although Champollion is credited with the decipherment of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, efforts to decipher the script were undertaken long before the 19th century. Okasha El Dali, an Egyptologist at UCL's Institute of Archaeology, makes a case for the interest shown by the medieval Arabs in hieroglyphs, as well as their efforts in deciphering the script. By that time, both hieroglyphics and demotic had fallen out of use. In fact, these two scripts were last used during the 5th century AD. The last known inscriptions in these scripts are from Philae, an island near Egypt's southern border. An example given by El Dali to support his case is the fact that some mosques were built on top of abandoned ancient Egyptian temples, and that worshippers would have been curious about the symbols they saw on the ancient ruins. The interest in hieroglyphs is also evident their use as decorative motifs. Moreover, as El Dali points out, Egypt was renowned since ancient times as a land of science. Therefore, the Muslims who conquered Egypt during the 7th century AD believed that by deciphering the hieroglyphic script, they would be able to access a vast repository of ancient scientific knowledge. This was especially This was especially attractive for alchemists who were in search of ancient and lost knowledge. In Abu al-Qasim al-Araqi's Kitab al-Akalim, for instance, alchemical symbols inspired by hieroglyphs can be seen. Some alchemists even attempted to decipher the hieroglyphs. One of these, for instance, is Jabir ibn Hayyan, who lived during the 8th century AD. According to later scholars, he had written an encyclopedic work on the decipherment of various ancient scripts, including hieroglyphs. Unfortunately, this work has not survived. Another Muslim alchemist who tried to decipher hieroglyphs is the 10th century Ibn Wahishiyah, who was originally from Iraq. Since his book on the decipherment of hieroglyphs has survived, Ibn is considered to be the first scholar to have partially deciphered the hieroglyphs.
Oh, so he was partially successful.
Yeah.
Wow.
According to El Dali, Ibn's work shows that the alchemists understood that the hieroglyphic symbols have phonetic value rather than functioning merely as pictures or symbols. This realization, however, was already made by Muslim scholars before Ibn. Nevertheless, Ibn contributed to the existing knowledge by pointing out that some of the symbols served another function, i.e. as determinatives. These symbols were placed at the end of words and were used to define their exact meaning. Even in Europe, attempts to decipher ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs predated the Rosetta Stone. The British Egyptologist E.A. Wallace Budge traces the beginning of the study of hieroglyphs in the modern times to 1556, when Giovanni Piero this guy's got a long name, Bolzani is his last name, published his Hieroglyphica, a treatise on the sacred writings of ancient Egypt and other nations. In the centuries that followed, various European scholars attempted to decipher the ancient script, though none succeeded. The failure of these scholars, who were men of great learning, was due primarily to the fact that they could not grasp the character of the script and the way the symbols were used. Therefore, it was crucial for scholars to first understand the nature of the hieroglyphic script before they could begin to decipher it.
In other words, they had to know the contents. Is that what they mean?
I'm not sure what he means by that.
That's because that's what the Rosetta Stone did. Gave them the contents before they... In other words, you need to know the nature of what it's talking about before you can start actually doing the decipherment. I think that's what he means.
Yeah. So returning to the Rosetta Stone, once the Greek portion was translated, scholars were able to work on the hieroglyphs in Demotic. One of the first scholars to investigate the scripts on the artifact was the French Orientalist Sylvestre de Sacy. He sought to decipher the Demotic using the Greek during the early years of the 19th century. De Sacy attempted to figure out the phonetic value of the signs. Apart from identifying some Greek proper names, however, he was unable to make much real progress. Seeing that his work was taking him nowhere, De Sacy eventually gave up on the Rosetta Stone. The first scholar to make any real progress in the study of the Rosetta Stone was the British polymath Thomas Young. In 1814, Young began his study of the Rosetta Stone. Although he focused on the demotic, like de Sacy before him, he was also investigating the hieroglyphs. 4 years later, he published articles on his findings in the Encyclopedia Britannica. At the time when Young was doing his research, there was already a long-held assumption that the hieroglyphic symbols enclosed in cartouches, an oval with a horizontal line on the end, were in fact the phonetic spellings of the royal names. Young applied his hypothesis to the cartouches of the Rosetta Stone and realized that it worked. In addition, by looking at the direction the animals and birds were facing, Young figured out the direction in which the text ought to be read. Despite these significant breakthroughs, the hieroglyphs on the Rosetta Stone were still undeciphered. Part of the problem was the suspicion held by Young regarding the phonetic value of the symbols. Although he knew that the symbols of foreign names had phonetic value, he was reluctant to apply it to the entire script. This view, however, was challenged by Jean-François Champollion, who studied the Rosetta Stone during the 1820s. Between 1822 and 1824, Champollion demonstrated that some of the hieroglyphic symbols contained phonetic value, others an ideographic one. And I don't know what that means, ideographic.
Like it's a pictograph, like a
concept as opposed to
phonetic.
Phonetic, yeah. Okay. And yet others served as determinatives, which I don't know what that is either.
It tells you how to read the word that it's after, that it comes right after.
Oh, okay. That's right. He explained that earlier.
Yeah.
Champollion also showed that the hieroglyphic script was a translation of the Greek one rather than the opposite, as it was widely believed at the time. Although the decipherment of the hieroglyphs was now achieved, it was still not quite complete, as more texts had to be studied before Champollion's work could be proven to be correct. This occurred in the decades that followed, which earned Champollion the title Father of Egyptology. With regards to the text on the Rosetta Stone, it is basically a decree confirming the cult of Ptolemy V. Based on the text, Egyptologists were able to determine that the decree was issued in 196 BC on the first anniversary of the pharaoh's coronation. Ptolemy inherited the throne of Egypt in 205 BC when he was 6 years old. He was, however, only crowned much later, as there were revolts throughout the kingdom. In any case, the decree was issued by the Egyptian priests, supposedly the ones from Memphis, to mark the coronation of the pharaoh and to confer onto Ptolemy the status of a living god. In return for their support, the priests received a number of benefits, including tax breaks for them and their temples, and being freed from the obligation to meet annually in Alexandria. They were allowed to meet in Memphis instead. Yeah, I never really knew too much about it. I knew it was like the 3 different scripts, which was like the key.
Yeah.
It's just really strange to me that, like, when I was looking at the pictures of it, the hieroglyphs on the top are all real big.
Yeah.
You know, and then the Demotic in the middle is like slightly smaller.
Medium.
And then there's the Greek at the bottom. It's just tiny, tiny, tiny little script.
Yeah.
Really interesting artifact. And wow.
Yeah.
Without that.
And it was made in the Ptolemaic era, which puts it, that's after Alexander the Great conquered Egypt. So, I mean, you're already at basically the end. You know, you're in that's the end of Egypt, basically.
Yeah.
So
the original writing in Egypt is incredibly ancient at that time.
Right. Very, very old.
Thousands of years
old. And we
old.
know, and there's multiple, what do they call them? Interregnums, right? Intermediary periods between like old and new kingdoms. And then, so there's like 100 years here where nobody built anything and nobody was doing anything and everything was falling into ruins. And then they show back up and they start rebuilding. And there's multiple, like they can, based on contextual clues in texts that have been carved into stone, they can now kind of figure out, okay, this was written in this period. Like you'll always see that, like, this convention of writing in the Egyptian hieroglyphs didn't start happening until the 25th dynasty of the New Kingdom or whatever.
Right.
So it is a key, but it's like I just wonder how.
Well, okay. let's just go back to the Dead Sea Scrolls. 2,000 years old,
Yeah.
somewhere around there. Less.
Yeah.
How much contextual information have we lost
Yeah.
in that period?
Yeah.
And so you take this 2,000, this modern key to translate 2,000-year-old texts.
Yeah.
It's going to be very difficult to understand.
Right.
And so
Fell on my knees and wept.
that's right. That's right. So it's like, even with that, but just, I don't know, for some reason, the fact that this object exists and it was found, and that is the reason why we have been able to
Read all this other stuff.
read all this other stuff. That's just crazy. And it's
Yeah.
the only one that
And,
has this.
and it's not complete, and they haven't found the rest of the pieces.
That's right. Where are the where? So if this obviously was, I guess I'm thinking this is not a custom at the time to record things in 3 different languages.
Yeah.
It was done this way during some type of political turmoil, so they thought it necessary
Yeah,
to put it in 3 different languages.
Ptolemy was one of Alexander the Great's generals. So Alexander dies having conquered most of what they knew as the world at the time, Persia and most, he conquers everything around.
That's why
Greece.
it had to be in 3 languages.
And it's in 3 languages because Ptolemy is being crowned, but he's also Greek, right? But he's one of.
It's crazy. And that's like the only thing that we have that
Right.
gives us the key into the ancient past.
Right.
God, that's just, I don't know why. It's just mind-blowing.
Because sometime between the Ptolemaic age and later when people start, like even when the Muslims moved in and started trying to read this stuff, the civilization had collapsed so completely that no one survived that knew how to read this stuff anymore.
Right. That's insane to me.
I mean, it had been conquered and had conquered so many people over the ages. And then at some point it collapsed so completely that no one could read any of the writing that it had produced over thousands and thousands of years.
And it seems like a script or a writing style that lasts that long.
Right.
Should be something you should be able to figure out. I don't know why I'm thinking that it should be something we should be able to figure out.
Trust me, guys. Everyone will know exactly what this means when we put this guy out here with these shoulder rivers and this bowling pin hat. It'll be totally obvious to anyone who looks at it.
That's what I'm saying.
Just put a snake in his hand and this bowling pin hat on, and everybody will know what's going on.
It's all because of that dream I had. I had that dream that I just was like, I was looking at all these hieroglyphs and it was just like, oh, it's so simple.
Yeah.
It's all like this and this and then I wake up and I'm like, no,
I've lost it.
can't remember.
But it was shortly after that you told me that a lot of it was numbers. Isn't that right?
Well, yeah, that's what led me to start actually looking at it.
Yeah.
But I was looking at the, I started out looking at the cubit rods,
That's right.
right? And I started thinking about the,
Why is this bird on 4?
well, I was thinking about the way there are all these different lengths and stuff. And then I was thinking, okay,
Yeah.
they're using ratios, all this kind of stuff. And then I was looking at the certain walls that have all this stuff carved into them. And I'm just like, this looks like they're just, I don't know, like what if it's all weird mathematical stuff?
Yeah, math.
And in a way, okay, what's like the Kabbalah?
Yeah.
It's a combination of numbers and words or letters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. No idea, but
And I mean, the numbers and the letters often are the same, right? If we go into like gematria, like the same.
that's what I was meaning.
The same symbols. Yeah. Gematria. The same symbols have numerical value. Yeah.
That's what I meant.
But there are
Kabbalah.
clear defined numbers in these scripts as well, like series of lines and dots or whatever, like the Mayans used. And
Yeah. That's another one that has never been
Yeah, they're getting
deciphered.
They're getting better at it, but yeah, and it's because they're like 3D somehow. There's symbols stacked on top of each other, and so you have to be able to read these ones that are behind the ones that are in the front.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Really
Well,
cool stuff.
yeah, I think that was a good show. We went way over. No one will care, but
Yeah, who cares? It's
Yeah.
a 3-hour show.
3-hour show. Oh, okay. So before I go
This
off,
beer is really good.
it is good. I obviously am not a professional at drinking beer while doing the show, though. I have serious burp problems now, so I have to be careful with this. But real quick before we get to the end here, regarding the hats. Okay, all 33 of the special hat boxes have been sold.
That's right.
Laura, she
Wheeling and dealing.
that's right. She's really working her magic there. So they are all sold.
And thank you all so much
Yes.
for the support.
That's right. Thanks everybody for the support so much. And some people, just gave us more. They were like, take more money, keep the change. But one of those people, Kevin, who's also Butt Flapperton in the Discord, he was fully aware of the rule that it was one hat and box per person. But what he did was he bought another one and he was like, do a giveaway on this second one that I've bought. So we have a hat that will come in the box with all the stuff we described, with some of Kyle's music, CDs, and other goodies that has already been purchased by Kevin. Pretty sure it's Kevin. Butt Flapperton. I know it's Butt Flapperton. So we're going to do this game, okay? So this is the way it's going to work. You guys have until July the 1st. Is that right? June, July? I think that's right. I talked to Laura about this earlier, and I can't remember any of the details now. But basically, right before she mails off all of the boxes, we're going to do a drawing out of the actual hat on the actual show. Okay? So everybody who wants to apply for the drawing, just either send Laura a private message in the Discord, or if you're on Twitter and you'd rather do it that way, send her a private message on Twitter. I don't know her Twitter handle, but you can look up Snakewife in the Discord for sure. I'll find her Twitter handle.
I'll just pull it up here.
Yeah, pull it up. So anyway, the idea is tell everybody who wants to be in on the drawing, and this doesn't apply to anybody. If you've bought a hat, that's fine. You can throw your name in if you want to get a second box. I don't want to make any rules like that. So anybody who wants to put their name in, everybody throw their names in by giving them to Laura. And then right before she's ready to mail off all the boxes, she'll come in here for the first segment. You got it?
Yeah. At Allen House 2007.
Okay.
ALLENHOUSE.
Right.
2007.
That's her on Twitter. So if you'd rather do it on Twitter rather than going in the Discord, you can send her a private message there. So we'll do a drawing on the show in the cube out of the hat, and whoever's name gets pulled out, we'll let you know, or you'll hear it on the show or whatever. We'll let you know. You give us the address, and then you'll get the box with the hat that we pulled the name out of. And as a joke, I was saying we also ought to leave all the names of the losers in the box, just so you know whose asses you kicked.
That's a great idea.
So that's how it's going to work. I'm pretty sure July 1st is the
Yeah, that's like a month away.
right. That's how much time you have to put your name in the hat, basically, and then we'll do a drawing. I think that's a Wednesday. That's a show day.
Okay.
So that's the day we'll do the drawing, basically. So you have until that day, roughly.
Very cool.
Yes, very cool. So thanks to everybody who purchased a hat. I can't believe they went so fast. Thank you guys so much. That is a limited edition thing. But Laura she wants everybody to know she's still working on getting a third-party vendor that's like TeePublic. That's what we use to make our T-shirts that will make nice embroidered hats that everybody can buy eventually. They won't have all the cool stuff in the box, and they won't be hand put together by Laura and us. But still, you will be able to get hats eventually. But I can't believe that all 33 of these have gone already. So thank you guys so much. And as you know, you can get a hold of us, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. Send us emails, and I will read them on the show if I get a chance. And if not, keep sending them because we love to read them. And I do read every single email that comes in. Website, brothersoftheserpent.com. Go to there to check out the Encyclopedia, the glossary, the SnakeSkins, which I was just talking about, which is our merchandise store, which runs through TeePublic. You can buy t-shirts, stickers, phone cases, all kinds of stuff, pillows. Also, join the Pyramid Scheme. You can do that through Patreon or by one-time donations, or you can set up your own monthly donation through PayPal. The links for that are also on the website. Give us reviews wherever you can, but especially in the Apple Podcasts website, which is in basically iTunes for podcasts. Give us reviews there. It really helps with spreading the show. Share the shows wherever you can. Follow us on Twitter, Snake Rose with no vowel, SNKBRS. Join the Facebook group, which was started by Jordan and is now run by History Shift. And all of you Facebook people, everybody that's in the group, we're starting to like, neither of us are on Facebook, but I see that you guys are all talking to each other and having a great time. Jeff has made a special section of the Discord chat where he posts snapshots of posts that are in the Facebook group. So that's really great for us to be able to see what you guys are talking about there. It looks like you're having a good time. So yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to all the Facebook group people.
What's up?
Yeah,
face people.
And so join the Discord if you want to. You can find a link to that on the website as well. You'll see it there. It's called Snake Pit Discord. Click on that. You'll see a little widget that has a connect button. You can join up. Also, the Library of the Serpent, which is run by Jeff. That's also on the website. And Jeff also runs the Discord, so thanks very much to him. History Shift makes all of our YouTube videos. He's an admin in the Discord. He runs the Facebook group, so he's awesome. You can follow him at History Shift on Twitter and find him on YouTube. Pod Doodles makes doodles of all of our podcasts. Not all of them, but he's working his way through them, where you can watch him draw while listening to the audio from the shows. It's really cool. So follow him on Twitter and find him on YouTube. Cosmographia, the podcast we do with Randall Carlson. Don't forget about that. Watch it if you want to listen to Randall talk about Atlantis and other crazy, awesome stuff. Join our Reddit group, the subreddit, r/Brothers of the Serpent. You can give us updates there. And thanks to Where Did the Road Go, Uncharted X, Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape, the C Word, Grimerica, Conspiranormal, the Cosmic Tusk, and the 7 Ages Audio Journal. And all of you listeners out there, we love you guys so much.
Always have.
Always will.
Good night, amigo.
Get back to work.
Cheers.
And such.
Turn it up, Scotty.